honorable member for North Abaco, who is continuing his presentation. The chair recognizes the honorable member for North Abaco.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given the budget realities we face, the Bahamian people can be assured that the ministry will do its part to reduce government expenditure whilst continuing to provide a high level of service. We've already started this process with a review of staffing levels at all of the overseas missions to determine if such levels are appropriate for the return to the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, I must admit, though, that I do question why at one office, in addition to 5 substantive officers and 10 locally engaged staff, the Bahamas would need to have 4 contracted protocol attaches. Mr. Speaker, at risk of giving the appearance of rushing to judgment, in my view, the ministry seems to have an inordinate number of contract officers. The Bahamian public can rest assured that all contracted personnel are under deliberate review to determine whether our monies are being wisely spent. Consequently, Mr. Speaker, I am advised that all of the overseas officers have been experiencing shortfalls in their budgets due to the increase in staff, the cost of operations in the host cities, and an increase in the areas of responsibilities. Additionally, I have asked for a comprehensive review of properties we own and those we rent overseas to make certain we are using our precious resources effectively. Looking at the funding for overseas offices, I was struck to note that the budget for the consular annex in Washington, D.C. is higher than that of the embassy. The budget for the annex in the 2016-2017 fiscal year, which is $490,000, is in fact higher than that for all of the other offices, with the exception of the offices in Geneva and in London. Half of the budget for the annex is for the rent for the consular premises, while an entire floor sits unused in the government-owned embassy building in Washington. I am advised that it was determined that the annex was needed because the government of the Bahamas was not meeting the needs of the Bahamian diaspora and often missed critical opportunities to promote culture, economy, and the people of the country in a critical diplomatic hub of Washington, D.C. Mr. Speaker, I've asked my technical officers to advise if those resources were reverted to the embassy, whether it would be able to meet these critical needs. We do need, in this instance, to look for a more fiscally prudent arrangement in order to show better financial accountability to Bahamian taxpayers. Accommodations for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Mr. Speaker, despite being a revenue earner, the ministry is still leasing all premises in New Providence. As stated in the manifesto, there is an urgent need for a purpose-built building to accommodate the specialized needs of a foreign ministry, example to be used as a negotiation facility, and technology for video and teleconferencing to save on travel costs, etc., and to bring all of its services under one roof. Meanwhile, overseas, the government owns the following properties. In London, numbers 10 and 11 Chesterfield, London, number 10 House, the Chancery, and number 11 is the official residence of the High Commissioner. In Ottawa, the official residence of the High Commissioner at 211 Lakeway Drive. And in Washington, D.C., the Chancery at 2020 Massachusetts Avenue, Northwest. And the official residence of the Ambassador at 5100 Warren Place, Northwest Washington. Maintenance and upkeep have been problematic given government procedures that require the Ministry of Works' involvement and a lack of assigned personnel with expertise in this area. The properties are therefore all in need of refurbishment, while the properties in London and Washington in particular are in need of extensive repairs. Mr. Speaker, it is estimated that the repairs to the residence will cost $192,000, and the residence is currently valued in excess of $1.8 million. The Chancery is currently valued in excess of $4 million, but now requires repairs costing some $3 million. $3 million in repairs are the estimates that we have at the ministry for a $4 million building. And so we're going to have to look at these things and to see what is best expedient for our country at this time. Maintenance and upkeep. Let's move on to the passport office, Mr. Speaker. Over the past year, the ministry embarked on a program to update the passport production facilities. In early 2016, the government signed an agreement with the Canadian Banknote Company, CBN, for the design and supply of a new passport book in early 2017. The government has also contracted with CBN for the provision of a new passport and visa issuance system. The offered solution involves the development, installation, training, and a 5-year support program for the passport and visa systems, both in the Bahamas and at embassy and consular sites. The system CBN has proposed allows for the paperless processing of passport and visa applications. This will greatly speed up the processing time for passports and visas. And the first phase of the system was introduced in January of this year, when the production of the new 50-page passport book was started. The system provides for an automated queue so that the applications are processed in the order they are received. The passport office is now producing passport books within 2 weeks of application. And once all stages of the project have been completed, it is anticipated that the wait time will be reduced even further. In the first 4 months of 2017, the passport office was issuing, on average, 350 pass books per day. Naughty Lutra. The second phase will include the introduction of online passport applications and the development of introduction of the e-visa component. It is hoped that online passport applications and the new visa system will be gradually introduced in the fall of 2017. Both the passport and the visa systems have been designed to allow for online payments or utilization of off-site payment facilities once all the conditions are in place. Mr. Speaker, since 2014, the ministry has adopted a program in common with a number of other countries called Diplomatic Week. Diplomatic Week was established by legislative mandate, the Foreign Service Orders Regulations 2014, Clause 90, Paragraph 2, which provides that the Diplomatic Week is to be held the 3rd week of October in each year. As such, the 4th annual Diplomatic Week is scheduled to take place during the 15th through 20th of October in this year. As the singular occasion to showcase the often unseen work of the ministry, Diplomatic Week offers an opportunity for the minister responsible for foreign affairs to convene at their own expense the Bahamas' Diplomatic Corps, which is comprised of mostly non-resident foreign diplomats who serve in a variety of countries around the world. Ambassadors high commissioners, consuls general, and honorary consuls to the Bahamas are able to share information and discuss matters of mutual concern and interest, to educate the public about the work of the ministry, and to dialogue with resident and non-resident diplomats of the diplomatic corps of the Bahamas. This year, Mr. Speaker, will also provide an opportunity to canvass support for the Bahamas' candidatures, the Councils of International Maritime Organization, the IMO, the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, and the United States and United Nations Human Rights Council, HRC. Diplomatic Week has come to be a much anticipated event for the diplomatic community. In particular, the opportunity to meet with Bahamas government officials and staff of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It is also an invaluable opportunity for the heads of Bahamas missions overseas to engage with and be briefed collectively by officials. As occurs in most foreign services around the world, Diplomatic Week incorporates an annual head of missions meeting. Also during Diplomatic Week, awards are presented to officers who have excelled in the foreign service. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also a revenue generator. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as a result of the provision of the consular services at home and overseas, actually makes money for the public purse. The ministry earns revenue primarily through the issuance of visas and the legalization of documents. From July 2015 to June 2016, the ministry earned $1,961,018.84 for the provision of consular services. And from July to March of this current fiscal year, the ministry has earned $1,765,332 for the provision of these same services. Given that this amount is some 400,000 more than the 1.3 million projected for the entire 2016-2017 fiscal year, the ministry, I'm told, will surpass the projected revenue for the period. The Passport Office is the other generator of revenue for the ministry. The Passport Office earned $2,626,531.61 for the period July 2015 to June 2016. And for the period July 2016 to March 2017, the office has earned some $1,351,282. While the figures for April, May, and June still have to be added, it would appear that passport revenue will not match the projected estimated 2.2 million. Mr. Speaker, the downturn in passport revenue may be attributed to a number of factors. Based on Passport Office statistics, some 97.5% of Bahamians now have their e-passports, and the renewal of those documents will not begin until late in 2017. The ministry, therefore, anticipates that passport revenue will rebound this fiscal year as those persons issued passports in 2017 begin to apply for the renewal of their passports. Mr. Speaker, in our manifesto, we foreshadowed that we, as a government, have determined that we will engage the Bahamian diaspora wherever it is found in the world. Although, when speaking about foreign affairs, one envisages principally relations between foreign countries, we must not forget that Bahamian nationals and those with Bahamian affinity also live overseas for various and sundry reasons. They must not be left out of our national dialogue relative to national development. We in the government are of the considered view that they too also have an important role to play in the national development of their country. Mr. Speaker, we are all aware that we punch very high above our weight as a country of less than 400,000 in population. We are also aware that we have a number of Rhodes Scholars. You mean, just look at our participation in the Olympics. You know, you have countries with millions of individuals who are not able to acquit themselves as well as we do. And we believe intellectually we have the weight, even if outside of this country, that if we tap into it, that can help us to progress this country in a positive direction that we would like to see it go in. And so as such, and in keeping with priorities outlined in our manifesto, we have begun the process of identifying mechanisms to increase interaction with the Bahamian diaspora with a view to exploring the potential for their greater involvement with the country's development. You know, I always found it, I don't consider myself a career politician, and I always found it rather odious that when a politician would have come to this place, he all of a sudden, through some form of osmosis or otherwise, would have all of the answers to all of the problems that the country faces. I am not of that view. I believe that we, you know, should engage each Bahamian who is willing to participate in the development of our country to help make it a better place. Being a country of a population of less than 400,000, it only makes good sense that we should seek to enlist the help and support of Bahamians wherever they might be found, willing to engage in the development and forward progression of their country. Toward this end, I have instructed that the modalities of such interaction be determined in the shortest possible time so as to get on with the work that is before us. Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up my ministry's contribution to this budget process and move directly to address my constituents, let me add that even while much of the work that my ministry does may not be immediately visible to the Bahamian public, everything we do must inure to their benefit. The Bahamian people have a right to expect that anything I do or say on their behalf accurately reflects their priorities, their interests, and their values. Like many other Bahamians, I accept that we are not a theocratic state, but one that endears democratic values and principles which encourage the rule of law, equality of the rights of individuals, and offers each of us a fair chance to succeed through hard work, commitment, and dedication. I cannot ignore, though, that the Constitution of this country declares in its preamble, and I quote, that we, the inheritors of and successors to this family of islands, recognizing the supremacy of God and believing in the fundamental rights and freedoms of the individual, do hereby proclaim in solemn praise the establishment of a free, democratic, sovereign nation founded on spiritual values. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Speaker, stands poised to put its collective experience, talent, and expertise at the disposal of the government for the benefit of the Bahamas and the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, now I move to the wonderful people of North Abaco. My people of North Abaco, Mr. Speaker, I want them to know that I meant every word I said when I spoke to them publicly and privately about doing all within my God-given power to improve their lives. I've heard your cries, North Abaco. I've seen your tears. And I want you to know that the words of Jimmy Cliff, I can see clearly now, the rain is gone, have taken on new meaning for us, because it's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day. It's going to be a bright, bright, sunshiny day for us now that you have sent me to this place as part of the minister-led F&M government that does business in the sunshine. Treasurer Key, I want you to know that even though my mother's roots are in Blackwood, with their affinity to Cornish town, I will always hold a special place in my heart for Blackwood. But frankly, Treasurer Key, I must tell you, I love you for the love you have bestowed so generously upon me. I want to say to Gilbert Davis in Murphy Town, as I promised, I will use our constituency allowance to help finish that community center in Murphy Town for the benefit of the many young people that you and your associates help to improve socially and otherwise within its walls. My conviction in this regard was reaffirmed by the victory we experienced in Murphy Towns in that polling division number 8, and the unprecedented showing, the unprecedented showing we had in polling division number 9, which we lost by the slimmest of margins. I think, Mr. Speaker, if we had one more day in there, we may have achieved our objective. And so following 5 years of obvious neglect, we will get North Abaco moving again. We will do so by remediating our degrading infrastructure, improving our economy, encouraging educational growth, incentivizing community development, and dealing effectively with rising crime. Mr. Speaker, you know, a couple of weeks ago I was so encouraged to participate in the official opening of the cultural park in my hometown of Dundas Town, which was so thoughtfully done through a local government council initiative. The venture with its sundry stalls represents the type of entrepreneurial initiatives and opportunities that our communities need to empower our people financially. It is my hope that such projects might be replicated all across North Abaco, so as to not only provide opportunities for economic growth, but for more importantly, Mr. Speaker, such enterprises might avail to a better socialization of our community and provide for families to be able to come outdoors and spend some quality time together. Green Teruki, I am fully aware of your issues with the mosquitoes and the problems that your roads are not done to the proper standards as you expect. Rest assured that these and other issues are being looked at even as we speak. Grand Key, Little Abaco, and Cooperstown, I understand your concerns relative to the availability of property. Know that this is the people's time. You hear me in this place? This is the people's time. This is your time. And your F&M government will work assiduously to meet this challenge head on. We won't wait until it is time for another election to look at the disbursement of properties, especially crown grants, Mr. Speaker. We won't do that. We are not like that. Someone who was here before from North Abaco used to say, we are distinctly different than that. And so, Mr. Speaker, as I wrap up, I say from this place, as I said in another place, we in North Abaco welcome and need foreign direct investors and fully appreciate their importance to the people and our economy. But that does not mean that we will sit idly by and allow anyone to mistreat Abaconians that are simply trying to feed their families. I say no more on that. That said, I wish for my people to also appreciate that a fair day's pay is required. A fair day's work is required for a fair. You will suffer the consequences. But if you are working, if you are giving to Caesar that which is his, you should be fairly compensated for what you give. Mr. Speaker, it is my prayer that God continues to bless the people of North Abaco, my people whom I love, and that God will continue to shower his blessings down upon this Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I thank you, sir.
As many. Did chair recognizes the honorable member for Central and South Eleuthera.
Mr. Speaker, oh, how I wanted to have the ability to say to the hopeless that man's extreme necessity is God's opportunity. I would like to be the son of a new day, announcing that the night is gone and that there is no more reason to be afraid. That the tears are the remembrance of a difficult moment, but what is really important is the day that has been born. Mr. Speaker, to be honest, I only have my own fears, my imperfect humanity, and my limitations. Even so, I want to continue being the trumpet that announced the victory. Thus, Mr. Speaker, I go to the Bible and I take refuge in the external word of God, who does not change, who transcends time and space and governs the universe. It is my God and yours. In the days since the victory of my government, Micah 7:15 has become a part of my daily devotion. As in the days when you come out of the land of Egypt, I will show them the wonder. Mr. Speaker, today I stand here in this honorable house, not by my own effort, but through the hard work, dedication, and loyalty of the good people of South and Central Eleuthera. I have been given an opportunity to serve. I wish to extend to my most profound gratitude to all those wonderful people in South and Central Eleuthera, my constituents. Those campaign managers, foot soldiers, chairpersons from Bahamas Town in the south to Hatchet Bay in the north, you were the persons who took my hand and said, I will be one of the live birds of threads this time. You know who you are, and time would not permit me to call all the names. However, I want you to know that you hold a special place in my heart. Mr. Speaker, I would like to publicly thank my dear wife, Shelley, my children, Eugene, Angel, Stephanie, and Stephen Jr., and the most loving daughter, my special needs daughter, Shauna Lee Johnson, who is a special needs 23-year-old, second-time voter. Oh, yes, she proudly voted for her dad. I say thanks to you, the best mother-in-law a man could ever have, Mrs. Clarabelle Williamson. My sister Sherry Barnaby and her husband Stephen, my sister Paula, my brother Gregory, and dare not forget my devoted and loving mother, Davis Sands. Thank you. All the love. I wish my late father was here. Eugene Johnson of Harbor Island. I can hear him saying, that's my boy. Mm-hmm. May his soul rest in peace. Mr. Speaker, I was sent here to be the voice of the wonderful people of South and Central Eleuthera. And that I pledge today, and I will always be. I was born into service, I was sworn into service by my constituents, the good people of South and Central Eleuthera. Mr. Speaker, I have lived, listened, and given service to the great people of Eleuthera for the past 40+ years. During my short time away from home as a student, I developed the interest and desire to serve for my people. Mr. Speaker, during my campaign, I was reminded by a young lady who lived in my community from another point. As a young person from another settlement, she reminded me the days of the C-band satellite system, which I built from broken systems that were discarded by others, and how I made it work and was able to receive television in my parents' home. This lady went on to remind me of how much love I had for my neighbors and how I gave of self to my community. Even back then, running wires across the community, supplying the neighbors with television. Initially, we all had to watch the channel, but that was okay. Mr. Speaker, I have told this story because I visited the people of Bahamas and John Miller. I am told that they know that they long to have cable service, if only to be able to watch our local news and stay informed with the current events of our country. Mr. Speaker, I know that this government of change will make this happen for my people in Bannermantown and John Miller. Mr. Speaker, the good people of Bannermantown and John Miller are in desperate need of potable water, a precious commodity to one's daily survival. Mr. Speaker, this government recognizes that indeed it is the people's power and will see to it that the people need our land. In this settlement, they will receive potable water. Mr. Speaker, as I listen to the stories of a young man in Carlton Bay who was asked the question by their association chairman, what concerns do you have as a young people? One of the young men replied, sir, should my mother need an emergency flight tonight, we cannot find $3,000 to fly our mother international. That worries me. Mr. Speaker, I would want to assure that young man from this place that this government will live up to its promise and ensure that such services are there for our senior citizens and provided when needed. Mr. Speaker, during the speech from the throne, my government pledged to construct a fully equipped mini hospital on the island of Eleuthera. Eleutherians, your mini hospital will be built by this caring and concerned government. That's a guarantee. Mr. Speaker, I was sent here as the voice of our young unemployed throughout Eleuthera, but mostly in South Eleuthera. The young people have sent me here for such a time as this. I want you all to understand that the land issues in South Eleuthera, Deep Creek and Governor's Harbor and Hatchet Bay will be addressed. The delay for 2 years plus in the issuing of business license certificates will be no more under this caring government. The young man who wants to invest in water sports and alike, the families in Roxanne wanting to start their livestock farming that will eventually end up in the fine dining restaurant. The young lady wanted to produce seashell jewelry and ladies' evening handbags, second to none. Once qualified, you will receive the assistance you need in the line of training, producing, marketing, and distribution from this caring government. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, I was sent to this honorable house by the single mothers of South and Central Eleuthera, whether by choice or by circumstances, who find themselves in great need of assistance and are being told that although only 1 pack of noodles and 1 can of tuna sits in their cupboard, she does not qualify for any further assistance from social services, because it is only used for emergency purposes. Mr. Speaker, through you, please allow me, Honorable Minister of Social Services and member from Seabreeze, those mothers say, They want to hear you say bye-bye to the humiliation. Mr. Speaker, since coming to office, I have had the privilege of visiting with the local heads of various departments to my constituency and listening to their concerns and learning the direction in which those departments need to go in order to make them more productive. Mr. Speaker, the cry is the same. As I move from north to south to my constituency, local government complexes are in disrepair and needing urgent attention. There's no air conditioning system, or what is there is not adequate. In the clinics, patients are forced to wait for service in the unbearable heat. Very, very limited or no medication at all for patients. With chronic hypertension, diabetes, heart disease, asthma, and the like. Mr. Speaker, this should not be allowed to happen in the 21st century, and certainly not under this government. South and Central Lutheran, be assured, it is presently being addressed. Mr. Speaker, the port of entry leaves much to be desired. Presently, there are no departure lounges at the Roxanne International Airport or at the Governor's Harbour International Airport, and the air conditioning system at the Roxanne International Airport is long overdue. Mr. Speaker, the traveling public should not have to endure such substandard conditions at our welcome and thank you station. Mr. Speaker, the docking facilities throughout South and Central Illusor is in urgent need of repairs and reconstruction. Mr. Speaker, the good people of South and Central Illusor deserve better. As a matter of fact, they deserve the best under this government. They will receive the best. Mr. Speaker, I have had the further privilege of attending the commissioning of a public library in the settlement of Waterford 2 Sundays ago, where the local government leaders, along with the residents of Waterford and One Illusion Foundation, made it possible. I have donated furniture to the library that the children attending can be comfortable. Our community believes in self-help, and we are seeking sponsors for air conditioning units. A member from South Beach, the Honorable Minister of Education, will be proud of the efforts of the people of South and Central Illusor. Just last week, Wednesday, I was invited to meet with some of the members of the Greencastle Development Association resident here in New Providence, who have pledged some 6 computers to the school, to the children of Greencastle for use at their library. Mr. Speaker, the library was allowed to fall into disrepair under my predecessor. But, Mr. Speaker, this member of Parliament of South and Central Illusor has already put into place the repairs of the library as we speak. Mr. Speaker, with the summer fast approaching, the children of South and Central Illusor, of South and Central, will not be left behind. They will have the opportunity this summer to use their finer motor skills to turn pages in a book, recognize words, learn new words, specialize in learning new words and how to get along with others as they share books, computers, and ideas with their peers and mentors. Mr. Speaker, already through self-help and donations, our friends of South and Central Illusor will have secured 6 laptop computers for the Deep Creek Primary School and another 2 for Bannerman Town, which will be delivered by the end of July this year, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you see, Illuterians have always been a people most grateful and hard-working. We believe in coming together to make it work, best for us and our children. Mr. Speaker, I recall as a little boy in the settlement of Parliamentary, not more than 6 or 7 years old, I would have to get up at 4 a.m. along with some of my other cousins to accompany my late grandfather, Harrison Zan, to the party house. This was after reaping the harvest the day before in the scorching sun. Our only reward was to have an hour or two to run around what we call the country with wheel carts and get a quick swim at the beach. Mr. Speaker, you see, I know Eleuthera. I've never left. Instead, I was one of the young men who stayed and bettered the condition of our people as best as we could. So, Mr. Speaker, when I speak of Crownland and beach access roads, I know of that which I speak. I sat in the company of my grandfather and his friends when they would speak of the property, the owners, the developers, the churches, and the pastors. Mr. Speaker, I gained an interest for these things and went on to equip myself to becoming a licensed realtor in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Speaker, during my campaign, I pledged to have all public beach access roads open and accessible to the public and to all beachgoers. Mr. Speaker, what will happen? This will happen under this government. I further pledge to identify all Crown lands within my constituency. Mr. Speaker, I recall further as a young boy in Eleuthera, we were made to worship at every church in my community. Whether that was your church or not, you had to visit and be a part of every youth group. It was at this place in my life that I came to realize that I was being molded for such a time as this. Mr. Speaker, Eleuthera has one of, or if not, the only world-renowned marching band, and that any from the island can have. And that has won competition throughout the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and wherever they went. And I would like to say a special thank you to Mr. and Mrs. Andrew Lewis. He and his wife are the two persons who put that band together, and they travel throughout the Bahamas and wherever they go. And they've always brought home those songs. We're proud of them. Mr. Speaker, that is some of the positive things that's happening presently for our young people in the communities of South and Central Eleuthera. I thank God for my grandparents, Harrison and Medora Sands, who instilled in me early the core values of life which I follow today. I would like to again thank the good people of South and Central Eleuthera for believing in my leadership and allowing me to be their voice to accomplish the things to better our lives for our people. Thank you to the Honorable Prime Minister for having faith in me. Thank you to the prayer warriors who interceded on my behalf. Thank you to all of my family and friends who supported me. I felt the love and heard the concern. Those of you who traveled from Nassau to Eleuthera weekend after weekend to connect with your families and friends, my heartfelt gratitude, my love and thanks to you, the young people of South Eleuthera, who followed me all the way to the polls. I say thank you. Mr. Speaker, please allow me at this time to congratulate the little league from Other Point, who won the baseball championship in Eleuthera. They will be traveling next weekend to Freeport in a couple of, they will be traveling in a couple of days to Freeport. I wish them great success, and I want them to know that I'm waiting for them to return, but not empty-handed, but with the trophy. Mr. Speaker, in the spirit of excellence, I wish to congratulate Mistress Karen Crane Miller of 45 years of stellar service in education to the island of Eleuthera and to our people. To her, Mrs. Crane, I say, a job well done. May God continue to bless you in your endeavors And may he give you strength to continue to pursue your dreams together we can achieve. Mr. Speaker, South and Central Eleuthera takes a pleasure in supporting this 2017-2018 budget. God bless the great people of South and Central Eleuthera, and God bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
As many? The chair recognizes the honorable member for Golden Isles.
Mr. Speaker, this afternoon I rise as a proud representative of the residents of the great constituency of Golden Isles. Those who know me particularly well are aware of my strong convictions for my God, for my country, and my desire to serve. So let me firstly begin by giving thanks to Almighty God, Yahweh Elohim, for making this possible and allowing me to stand in this historic place. Mr. Speaker, today I would like to publicly thank my wife for her unwavering support in my quest to be here. My mother, who is watching in Greencastle, Eleuthera, for her steadfast faith and her unrelenting prayers. My brother, Elder Glenn Miller, for his dedication and commitment to the campaign. My uncles, my aunts, and other family members, both in Eleuthera and here in New Providence, especially my Uncle Anthony Miller, who once served as the representative for Central and South Eleuthera in this historic house. Also Resurrection Ministries, our church family. And of course, a huge thank you to Chairman Brown and the entire campaign team. Of course, to our Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Hubert Alexander Minnis, for affording me this opportunity to serve. And again, the wonderful people of the great constituency of Golden Isles. Mr. Speaker, permit me, if you will, to convey sincere condolences to several families in the constituency, namely the Morrisons in Adelaide, Siobhan Clark and family on the loss of their husband and father, Denzel, and also the family of the late Janet Hannah. Mr. Speaker, the 2017 historic general elections presented me with an opportunity to do that which I truly love, to be of service to others. As you are aware, sacred scripture states that those who would be great must first serve. I am and will always be what the people have elected me to be. A man of character who will not get caught up in the potential trappings that sometimes comes with politics. I am a humble servant of Almighty God and a humble servant of the people. We say it's the people's time. And so if it's truly the people's time, we must always be mindful of what we do in this honorable house to ensure that the people of this great country feel the shift in a tangible way. We were not elected because people wanted more of the same, but rather because they craved for genuine change. A change that would catapult us back to the days when our communities were safe, when employment was high, when the extended family was a strong safety net, when people appreciated the spirit of true volunteerism and not the promise of the almighty dollar. I wish to speak briefly, Mr. Speaker, about the constituency which I've been elected to represent. Mr. Speaker, Golden Isles has been long used for indiscriminate dumping to the extent that persons will literally dig into the ground to sell fill, and then, Mr. Speaker, place their derelict vehicles in the earth and cover them up as if nothing happened. And that happens too often in the constituency of Golden Isles. That must cease. Mr. Speaker, destruction of the wetlands. There's an area known as Miller's Creek where persons, residents, used to swim, used to fish. But now, Mr. Speaker, because of what has happened to the wetlands, swimming is a thing of the past. Fishing is a thing of the past. It's a shame. Also, in Adelaide Village, nearing the entrance, some persons were discovered stealing diesel. Lines were broken, and on the wetlands, diesel. They don't know how severe, what extent it was, how long it's been going on. But the wetlands are being destroyed. Mr. Speaker, earlier this year, in the aftermath of Hurricane Matthew, the side opposite chose to establish a dump adjacent to Dignity Gardens, a dump. A dump, Mr. Speaker, on the well reserves. I said during the campaign that dump and dignity do not correlate. Did not correlate then, do not correlate now. The residents wanted the dump gone then, and they want the dump gone now. Mr. Speaker, the issue of contractual employees versus permanent pensionable employees is also a vexing one. Because, Mr. Speaker, employees, or whoever the supervisor or the person in authority is, chooses to make permanent whoever they wish. And so you have persons becoming permanent, and many persons on the job site for as long as 20 plus years are still considered part-time. Mr. Speaker, I am of the opinion that a definite national policy need to be established, and so that the policy will speak specifically to those issues and concerns. The great constituency of Golden Isles is a very diverse one, and it includes quite a number of our Creole-speaking brothers and sisters. Mr. Speaker, during the campaign, the 2 weeks prior to the general elections, I don't know if you did, but persons who were driven in the area of the immigration building, cars, vehicles were from Shirley Street almost to Rosetta Street, because of persons whose documents were being processed. The many residents who are Haitians or of Haitian descent are tired of successive governments waiting until it's nearing election time to process their documents, whether for citizenship, permanent residency status, or work permits. All they are asking, and I hope the member for Sudan is listening carefully, all they are asking is that their documents be processed in a timely manner. and that they are treated with the level of respect and dignity they deserve. The oldest of the African villages established on the island of the Providence is Adelaide Village, established in 1831. The people of Adelaide are proud of their heritage, but they feel as if the rest of the mainstream society have forgotten about them. In an effort to change that, Mr. Speaker, I'm already in discussions with several persons in that historic community to revive the Adelaide Day so that it becomes an annual historic cultural festival. And to the fine residents of that historic village, especially the more elderly ones, particularly Mr. Arlington Morrison, Miss Marjorie Bullard, and Mama May Higgs. And Mama May Higgs no longer resides in Adelaide, but she probably shares that her navel string is buried there. I should like to emphatically declare to them, Adelaide Day shall return. Mr. Speaker, crime has adversely impacted our great constituency as it has others. Many persons in the public domain would recall that our campaign headquarters was broken into, and Mr. Speaker, they took everything, brand new appliances, all the food, all the meat, even the surveillance equipment. But, Mr. Speaker, they could not break our spirit, could not break our will, could not break our resolve, because we are a resilient people. In keeping with our manifesto and campaign promise, we shall seek to implement closed-circuit TV at the earliest opportunity. It is sad, Mr. Speaker, indeed very sad, that this is what we have to resort to. But it is what it is, and that's where we are. And now, Mr. Speaker, for just a few moments, I'd like to speak to the budget. In my capacity as the Parliamentary Secretary in the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development, I have the opportunity to do what our Lord Jesus would have us do. That's to reach out to the poor and to the downtrodden, and to show them that while in their weakest moment they feel as if they've been forgotten and that nobody cares, that a caring government cares and will give more than lip service. We are duly reminded of this awesome responsibility as underscored in the speech from the throne on page 16, and I quote, "All Bahamians are entitled to an unacceptable standard of living, ready access to essential services, and a livable physical environment. My government is deeply aware of poverty, especially in the heritage communities of Nassau, and is determined to eradicate the in-your-face physical conditions that demean the dignity of our people. For decades, residents in the over-the-hill areas have not received the kind of attention required to transform their businesses, residential, and the overall environment. And there are those that would say centuries as opposed to decades. Accordingly, my government will institute urban development by revitalizing heritage communities and expanding the reach of social services." End quote. Mr. Speaker, with proper assessments, programs, and services, the Ministry of Social Services and Urban Development is poised to be a catalyst for transformational change. Change beginning at the community level, where each one can reach one. Change that will take us back to the creed we once lived by as a people, which was being our brother's keeper. Mr. Speaker, we cannot retreat into the exclusive walls of the gated communities and the suburbs and forget the reality that supposedly dwells in so many of our inner city homes. The reality of unemployment, the lack of basic utilities like electricity and water that we so often take for granted, and the limited and sometimes no food. We must resist the temptation to sit in judgment, as we so often do sometimes. Many of these families are not living beyond their means, but their means of making a living have simply become complex and challenging. This is quite evident, Mr. Speaker, when we see the challenges commonly perceived as aspects of poverty actually existing in areas and among persons that others would consider privileged. And I got to see a lot of that during the campaign. Mr. Speaker, the fact that we have had to begin our time governing with borrowing some $722 million, almost $750 million, is a very troubling and vexing one. Sadly, the trend here in the Parliament of successive governments have been to borrow to cover the previous government's debt. The challenges for our archipelago are numerous logistically, as it requires a high degree of creativity to charter our way forward. Mr. Speaker, I'm thankful and grateful to Almighty God that to date as a nation, we have been able to survive economically, unlike other countries in our region who continue to borrow more money than they were able to generate in tax revenues. For many of our neighboring countries, their spiraling debt proved to be an unrelenting path to their currency's devaluation. Mr. Speaker, we must do within all of our powers and avail ourselves of all our resources to avoid such a fate. The previous administration's attempt to increase internal revenue was to levy an onerous tax on the backs of the poor, which no doubt contributed to their unceremonious rejection at the polls. It would be wise for us not to attempt to tax our way out of debt. We must prove ourselves wiser than our predecessors if we wish not to suffer a similar fate. Mr. Speaker, it is then incumbent upon us to identify new streams of revenue as opposed to only focusing on the old model of foreign direct investment. We must be innovative and bold and daring and tap into the genius of the Bahamian spirit and take a look deep into the reservoir of the souls of our people and of our country. Mr. Speaker, we must now, in my opinion, exploit the abundant natural resources of our country. I believe it is our only path to sustainable development. Our country is approximately 100,000 square miles of the coast of South Florida, stretching between Cuba and Haiti. Mr. Speaker, our rich resources lies in what we always talked about, sun, the sand, and the sea. Our natural resources include but are not limited to solar energy, our rich marine resources, forestry, limestone, solar salt, our pine barrens, fresh water, our geographical location, sand, and aragonite. In the not too distant past, we once manufactured our own lumber. The pine barrens of Grand Bahama, the pine barrens of Abaco, of North Andros, and even Western New Providence awaits the genius of our people to create a new industry and to begin to manufacture them into lumber as we did before. I believe if we did it before, we can do it again. Mr. Speaker, of our approximately 100,000 square miles, about 94,500, Mr. Speaker, is marine resources. Mr. Speaker, our sun, more than 100,000 square miles belong to us. We must begin to contemplate ideas to establish new industries to tap into that tremendous potential for solar energy. Mr. Speaker, later this year, electric vehicles will be produced, mass-produced, electric. The shift is beginning from black gold, as they call oil, now to a different type of energy, alternative energy. Finally, Mr. Speaker, aragonite. Mr. Speaker, the father of our nation, the late Right Honorable Sir Lyndon Oscar Pindling, stated in 1969 that aragonite will be the financial freedom for the Bahamian people. 1969. Mr. Speaker, however, here we are, 48 years later, and only a few, the precious few, are benefiting from this natural resource with tremendous potential for our nation economically. Mr. Speaker, like the father of our nation, I too firmly believe the financial freedom of our country still lies in aragonite. We can create new industries, new streams of revenue, and a tremendous job creation by tapping into the potential of this natural resource. Mr. Speaker, we export millions of metric tons of aragonite annually for a mere $2 per metric ton, while its market value ranges between $900 and $2,500 per metric ton. Mr. Speaker, in my opinion, we should at least levy a tax consistent with the market value. The industrial applications for oolitic aragonite, as it's known, are intensive because it's the purest and most consistent form of calcium carbonate in the world. I must repeat that. I repeat, here in the Bahamas, the industrial applications for oolitic aragonite, as is known, are intensive because it is the purest and most consistent form of calcium carbonate in the world. Calcium carbonate is widely used in many industries, including everything from agriculture to aerospace. Another unique component of aragonite is its shape, Mr. Speaker. Because of its crystalline structure, it is 6 times more soluble in water than calcite, making it more bioavailable. It gives it the significant applications for cleanup of contaminated media. Mr. Speaker, the past century of industrial, military, and commercial activity in the United States has resulted in hundreds of thousands of hazardous waste sites where organic compounds and metals contaminate surface and subsurface soils and its sediments. In order to reduce risks to human and ecological receptors, considerable time and money is being spent remediating these sites. To overcome the difficulties inherent in hazardous waste remediation and resource constraints, as well as to help prioritize cleanup efforts, responsible parties and regulators are using concept of bioavailability during hazardous waste site management. Mr. Speaker, can you imagine living in the United States? Then a businessman would walk up to me and say, "You're from the Bahamas?" Takes out a cell phone and said to me, "Do you know your cell phone with the screen is made from the aragonite your country produces, and it's the best in the world?" How shocked I was. They lied to me, Mr. Speaker. They told me that we do not have any natural resources in our country. Was I the only one they told that? They lied to all of us. And they knew better. Because prior to the PLP being in power, aragonite was being exported. Oolitic aragonite occurs naturally and is sustainable, consistent, and pure. While there are other forms of aragonite available from the Caribbean, it is of coral origins and not sustainable, and does not match the quality, the crystalline and microporous characteristics of oolitic aragonite. Mr. Speaker, Grand Bahama, as we speak, has been in a state of economic decline for quite some time. But, Mr. Speaker, the best area for aragonite is in the northern Bahamas, in the region of Grand Bahama. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, as we are meeting in this house, there are ships in the harbor in Freeport, the ships that have left in transit to Mexico, carrying with it our aragonite. Mr. Speaker, our precious resources. But certainly, Grand Bahama does not reflect it. Mr. Speaker, I say to you this afternoon, there are Bahamians, there are indigenous Bahamians who have the knowledge, who have the expertise, and who have the connections to allow this and to begin the creation of new industries in our country. Mr. Speaker, later this month, some 5,000 plus students will graduate or will be awarded leaving certificates, most of whom will join the line of the unemployed. But, Mr. Speaker, if we begin to look within, as I close, if we begin to look within ourselves as Bahamians, if we begin to look within our borders and make the decision that we will tap into the talent that we have, as opposed to always looking outside, believing that foreign is better. Mr. Speaker, the Chinese are exporting conch shells by the container load. Because the conch shell, Mr. Speaker, is 99+% pure calcium carbonate. So what do we do with it? Because of our ignorance, one man's garbage, one man's dump, one man's trash is another man's treasure. So as I close, I want to say to Bahamians at large, it's prayer time. It's no time to grow weary or become dismal. We don't want our people to stop praying now, because it's the prayers of the faithful that will help to turn our country around. Mr. Speaker, we've got to leave our comfort zones and exercise a degree of flexibility if we wish to see a different Bahamas. We can't keep doing the same things over and over and expect different results. As leaders, we have the opportunity to prove by example that we are not simply giving lip service, but rather we are truly committed to serving in the best interests of our people at all times. Mr. Speaker, again, I firmly believe that if we look into the souls and the spirit of our Bahamian people who are ready, who are willing, and who are more than able to help pave a new way forward to the creation of new industries from our natural resources, we can bring about real change for our economy. Mr. Speaker, I believe that the time has come that we must seriously consider, and I think add to a ministry or a separate ministry for natural resources. We must take a closer look. We owe it to ourselves, we owe it to our people. Mr. Speaker, Golden Isle supports the 2017-2018 budget. And Mr. Speaker, as I close, let us continue marching forward, upward, onward, together. And may Almighty God continue to bless the Commonwealth of the Bahamas and make the wealth more common. Long live the Commonwealth of the Bahamas.
As many?
Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the honourable member for Elizabeth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today marks the first time that I rise on behalf of the great people of the constituency of Elizabeth. You know, Mr. Speaker, it's been a long time coming. But let me tell you, 3 times is a charm. We started the campaign for Elizabeth in 2009. The by-election of February 16, 2010. Oh yeah, I remember. was a battle that ended in a nail-biter and proved to everybody that every single vote counts. On the evening of February the 16th, after that by-election it was contested by some characters who have played a prominent role in our country's legislative development and who played a part in what I would call political theater. Names like Rollins, Monker, Pinder, and Cassius Stewart. That evening, the count was 1,501 Sands, F&M, 1,500 Pinder, PLP. It was a victory that I got to savor for all of one night because there were 5 protest votes that were cast on that day. Now that political drama played out at the Thelma Gibson Primary School long into the night and into the next night and the night after that. And it was bone-chilling cold. The drama then moved to the Supreme Court, where day in and day out, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas was focused on one thing politically, and that is the outcome in Elizabeth. As you know, we lost that case, and we lost the election by a total of 3 votes. Now, despite that loss, after what can only be called a trial by fire, I think I earned some political stripes. But I was determined to fight for the Bahamas and for Elizabeth, which moves us to 2012. And that attempt didn't go so good either. You see, the election of 2012 was disappointing not just for me, but for many of my colleagues. But we never lost faith. We never gave up hope. We worked. We held the government's feet to the fire. We campaigned, and we waited. You see, despite the recommendations to leave the people who have become my people, my heart and head compelled me to stay in Elizabeth. Many people told me to go somewhere else, stay in medicine, find an easier constituency. And I admit now that there were times that I wondered why God had determined that I should walk this road. But the Bible says that they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings. They shall run and not be weary. And they shall walk and not faint. So, Mr. Speaker, as I stand for the first time in this honorable house to represent a community, a group of people, having walked a mighty long road, allow me just a brief moment to reflect and to savor and to thank Almighty God who has brought me this far. You know, I have benefited from the love and support of many. I'm the youngest of 5 children of Basil and Bobby Sands, a couple who hail from Grantstown and Clarencetown, Long Island. They were 2 ordinary, working-class people who accomplished some extraordinary things in their own right, and who raised 5 children who were taught the values of family, education, love of God, hard work, honesty, and service to country. My brothers and sisters and I have been blessed to contribute to and to benefit from our efforts on behalf of this great country. We work in hospitality, in law, in medicine, and accounting, and I must admit I'm the underachiever of the bunch. My mom, who ultimately left her career at Bahamas Air to become the administrator of my surgical practice until her retirement, that is a supporter of the Free National Movement. My father, who in most other things is a wise and prudent man, a person on whose counsel I rely every day, but who is politically misguided because he has been historically a supporter of the PLP. Now, Freetown, looking at the results of the general election, I ain't gonna swear for him this time.
Don't worry, I got it.
I am blessed to have benefited from my parents' presence and example. And there's no doubt that I have benefited from their support. You know, I have 4 talented, beautiful, brilliant children. That's Adrian, Brandon, Nicholas, and Mila, who have sacrificed much because of my vocation as a surgeon and now as a public servant. It is for them and for other young people like them that I am in this place. Mr. Speaker, I have an awesome campaign team. I got the best in the business. They have stood with me in good times and in bad, and I cannot thank them enough. We are Elizabeth Strong. I have spent the last 31 years of my life as a physician and a surgeon, and it's been my honor to serve the people of the Bahamas as a trauma surgeon, a cardiac surgeon, and a chest surgeon. My career choice has allowed me to sit at the feet of giants, to learn my craft from some who are the most accomplished in their field in the world. In Baltimore and Detroit, I learned that a great physician is defined by the people he is privileged to serve. So there was never any doubt about me returning home to the Bahamas. You see, for me, surgery is not about the agility of my hands. It has always been about the clarity of my thought and abiding love and concern for my patients. And that is what has defined my success in practice. Wisdom and common sense in the professions and in politics makes you realize that you should always leave before people insist on showing you the door. I understand the concerns of my patients, my colleagues, students, and staff as I leave the practice of medicine. I have trained several competent surgeons to replace me. Where there's a void, we will recruit someone to fill that space until one of our own is ready to step up to the plate. But to fill the void, for a brief period, I will provide emergency and backup coverage. But let me assure you that the same drive, determination, and passion that have guided my surgical career will be the tools that I will use to fight for the heart and soul and the health of my country. My focus now will be less about fixing broken hearts, connecting blood vessels, or cutting out cancers, or patching up bullet-riddled bodies, and more about providing the tools and improving the system that prevents them from getting broken in the first place. I will work to improve and modernize a system that functions better than the one in which I work. On that you can depend, Mr. Speaker, so help me God. I am indeed privileged to have been asked by the Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Hubert Minnis, to serve as the Minister of Health with responsibility for the Ministry of Health, the Department of Public Health, the Public Hospitals Authority, and National Health Insurance. We have set out a very ambitious health agenda starting immediately. My first few weeks in office have been spent understanding the challenges of our country and the system charged with promoting and protecting the health of Bahamians. Mr. Speaker, recently I had the distinct pleasure of representing our country at the 70th World Health Assembly and the Commonwealth Ministers of Health meeting in Geneva, Switzerland, where we discussed global security, the regional disease burden of NCDs, or non-communicable diseases, and the public health impact of violence. This year, the people of the Bahamas will entrust the sum of $307,596,885 of their tax money to the public health sector. That will be divided between the Public Hospital Authority, the Ministry of Health, and we have set aside $40 million to fund the program known as National Health Insurance. Now, this total is more than any other government ministry. Combined with out-of-pocket and insurance expenditure, Bahamians spend annually 9.7% of gross domestic product, or approximately $800 million per year. That puts us among the top 5 in total spend in Latin America and the Caribbean. This total health expenditure as a percentage of GDP has been climbing over the last 2 decades. But with the current trend in NCDs, non-communicable diseases, violence, and infectious diseases, particularly HIV and AIDS, our already struggling economy will be crippled by healthcare challenges and costs. You see, we have made some choices over the years that have created horrendous health challenges. They cannot be wished away, and they are incredibly expensive to fix. Yes, we have the technology and the skills and the drive to fix many of the problems. The problem is, can we individually or collectively afford to do so? The old people used to say, if you like it, let it kill you. And we, and I do mean we, most of us, are doing exactly that. Unless we can make fundamental changes that modify our behavior and allow us to prevent sickness in the first place, the amount of suffering, disability, and death in this country will explode. That is our reality. Add to that, as pronounced by the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Glenn Benaby, our public health system is losing up to 25% per year on waste and inefficiency. And our economy don't have that much VAT money to pay for that kind of waste. Mr. Speaker, the biblical truth that says, to whom much is given, much is required. And in the context of the Ministry of Health, a new day has dawned for the business and operations of health. The Bahamian people on May 10th have spoken resoundingly and resolutely that it can no longer be business as usual. They expect to see, to touch, and to feel reform. They want value for their hard-earned tax money. They are offended by the state of our public affairs. They have lost tolerance for waste and inefficiency. Opportunities for them and for their children are far less than years gone by due to the things that we have done and the things that we have left undone. You see, Bahamians have been taxed, Mr. Speaker, to the breaking point. So they don't think that the government should be allowed to spend, while they have to tighten their belt. Many of our people are struggling to survive. Bahamians just ain't on that run no more, Mr. Speaker. They want this problem fixed. They want us to find solutions. What Bahamians want now is not just a description of the problem or how we got here, but rather a roadmap and clear solutions to lift us out of this mess. Furthermore, they want to know whether the person or persons in charge are competent, whether they're honest, whether they're accountable and attentive. And if they're found not to be, they want them to be held accountable and to let the chips fall where they may. Mr. Speaker, we have already gotten evidence of improper behavior in the Ministry of Health. It has been referred to the appropriate authorities, and at an appropriate time, we will advise the public of the findings of those investigations. I invite the public, if you know of any malfeasance in the Ministry of Health, please feel free to let me or any senior official in our office know. In order to solve a problem, you must first recognize and define it. You got to claim it. The Bahamas will then have to address these health conditions. So let me tell you the story of our health care reality. Our population has grown from an estimated 325,000 in 2005 to 369,670 in 2015. That's a 15% increase in the past decade. Much of that is due to migration. Birth rates in the Bahamas have decreased from 17.1 per thousand in 2010 to 16.7 per thousand in 2015. The non-Bahamian population is 1/6 of the total population, which is 25% increase from 2000. And Haitians comprised 64.4% of the non-Bahamian population. We have an increasing life expectancy, which is now 75.7 years at birth in 2016. But while we are the world leaders in tourism, finance, and sports, we are also the world leaders in ways that are destructive to the fabric of our social and economic well-being. Mr. Speaker, we are one of the leaders in penetrating trauma due to gunshots and stabbings. The probability of dying from these types of injuries far exceeds the risk of death from cancer or HIV/AIDS in the Bahamas. In 2012, as now, the Bahamas holds the distinction of having the 11th highest homicide rate in the world. We are one of the most violent countries in the world. We beat, stab, shoot, and rape each other at an unacceptable rate. Our homicide rate was triple the rate considered by the World Health Organization as an epidemic. I have said this repeatedly. It is in large part due to the professionalism of our healthcare team that our murder rate is not dramatically higher. For the last few years, the number one cause of death of a Bahamian male is a bullet. The number one cause of death of a Bahamian male, not heart disease, not stroke, not diabetes, is a bullet. Mr. Speaker, it is very important for any country to base policy decisions and give public accounting based on facts. There's been a question raised about the level of violent crime in the Bahamas, and the controversy has been worsened by official comments coming out of the previous Ministry of National Security and the Royal Bahamas Police Force. As an example, a comment made by the Commissioner of Police giving the annual report in 2014, when he said that according to police figures, attempted murder rose 47% from 15 cases in 2013, 15 cases of attempted murder, to 22 cases of attempted murder in 2014. Hold those numbers for a second. As mentioned by the honorable member from Mount Moriah in his contribution, firearms, guns of all kinds, play a significant role in our crime challenges. For example, a new crime study indicates that during 2010 to 2015, 78% of murder victims died as a result of gunshot wounds. The member also stated that there were 906 shooting incidents during that same period that did not result in death. Now, over the last many years, we have collected statistics at the Princess Margaret Hospital in our emergency room. These statistics were collected when I ran the department between 1997 and 2007. What we have found is that in 2013, there were 254 gunshot victims seen in the emergency room at Princess Margaret Hospital and 290 stab wounds. In 2014, there were 248 gunshot victims and 253 stabbing victims. Now, a few years ago, the side opposite, while in government, took great exception when I released the PMH statistics, in part because the numbers of shootings recorded at the emergency room at Princess Margaret Hospital was different than the statistics released by the Ministry of National Security and the police. Now, this went so far that I was summoned to the office of my supervisor to explain why I should not be dismissed. It was alleged that I was violating the Data Protection Act. So, Mr. Speaker, today I will present to this honorable House the number of stabbings, shootings, and assaults at Princess Margaret Hospital alone. They do not include the numbers from Doctors Hospital or the Rand Memorial Hospital. For the period 2012 to 2016, the A&E department at PMH managed almost 8,000 assault cases, 1,229 stabbing cases, 1,078 gunshot wounds. To bring it home for the Bahamian people now, in 2016 alone, 1,272 assaults, 246 stabbings, 216 gunshot wounds for PMH alone. And although these statistics may seem as if the numbers are going down, the problem, Mr. Speaker, is that this is only people that arrive in our emergency room alive. You see, while our staff is competent, we can only help those that are brought in alive. So could it have been that the Royal Bahamas Police Force and the Ministry of National Security was suggesting that of the 462 persons shot or stabbed, that the perpetrator was only attempting to murder them 20 or 30 times? In the spirit of transparency, during the people's time, we shall make these statistics starting today available to the press and the public as a matter of course. We can then allow the public to compare these statistics to any others that they choose and come to their own conclusions. We are not doing well, Mr. Speaker. When we continue the story, we find out that our infant mortality rates have hovered between 18 and 23 per 1,000 live births over the last 4 years. These rates are among the highest in the non-Latin Caribbean. In 2016, preliminary data show an infant mortality rate of 19.2. Just so that you have an idea of the standard, in the United States, the infant mortality rate is 6 deaths per 1,000 live births. In Barbados, it's 11.6. In Cuba, 4.5. In Haiti, it is 59. Another chapter in our health story, which should be of great concern, and we should all be concerned, that overweight and obesity in the Bahamas is extremely high and getting worse. The percentage of the population who was either overweight or obese reached 79.2%. We are a part of the Americas, Mr. Speaker. The world is divided into 6 regions. We are part of the Pan-American Health Organization. The Americas are the heaviest region in the world, and the Bahamas is the heaviest country in the Americas. The Pan-American Health Organization, one of 6 regions in the world, is the heaviest, the countries on average, is the heaviest region in the World Health Organization. And the Bahamas, when compared to every other country in PAHO, we are the heaviest people in that region. Most startling is that overweight and obesity among school-aged youth have rocketed by 436% since 1988, from 6.4% to 34.3%. Another contributing factor is the low level of exercise, although as Bahamians we refuse to accept that we got a problem. In an important study 90% of Bahamians reported eating less than 5 servings of fruit and vegetables a week, as compared to 47.3% in 2005. But if we look deeper, the problem starts from birth. Breastfeeding rates in the Bahamas are low and have varied between 10.9% and 29%. You see, Mr. Speaker, exclusive breastfeeding for the first 16 weeks of life is considered a good start to a lifetime of healthy nutrition and has been shown to be protective against obesity and chronic diseases. But we don't believe in breastfeeding. In the almost decade interval between 2005 and 2012, our nation saw a 16% increase in sedentary lifestyles, a 13% increase in overweight, a 14% increase in obesity, a 55% increase in hypertension, and a 160% increase in diabetes. Yes, Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas has the highest incidence of diabetes in the world. I can let you catch yourself. We have the highest incidence of a set of gene mutations called BRCA1 and BRCA2, which is 300% higher than the world average. And what this means is that women in the Bahamas with these genes are 3 to 5 times more likely to get breast or ovarian cancer than those without those genes. Breast cancer in the Bahamas is not like breast cancer everywhere else, with our women being diagnosed 2 decades earlier and 2 stages later. At last tally, in December of 2014, there were 8,630 people living in the Bahamas with HIV/AIDS, representing 2% of our population, or 1 in 50. It is one of the highest incidences or prevalence of HIV/AIDS outside of sub-Saharan Africa. No, sir. It is not a good picture. I'm going to tell the truth. While we have dropped our national prevalence from 3% to 2%, far too many of our people are being diagnosed late, and we are seeing an increased incidence of HIV in our young people. Let me say to St. Anne's that we have committed to a vision of 0 new HIV infections, 0 HIV-related deaths, and 0 HIV-related discrimination in a world where people living with HIV are able to live long and healthy lives. And I urge my parliamentary colleagues to support me and my ministry on this initiative. So, Mr. Speaker, it is for all of the reasons that I have just spelled out that our health care costs are so high. Many persons are well on their way to the development of catastrophic complications of illnesses, of violence, and trauma. This is our reality. And unless we accept it, we cannot effectively plan a strategy to fix it. Now, having defined the problem, the Ministry of Health is charged with outlining that strategy. We must have the right resources, human and otherwise, and deliver care in our community, in our clinics, and in our hospitals. Now, when we look at the Bahamas, we realize that our country is an archipelagic nation that makes us have to replicate or duplicate services island by island. It's not just good enough to have healthcare services in New Providence. Now, I want to talk about some terms that form a part of the jargon of the international health community. We're going to talk about equity and parity, because health inequity continues to prevail throughout the Bahamas. Health inequity is a term that refers to differences in health among subgroups that are considered unfair and unjust, and that are avoidable by reasonable means. Many of these inequities are influenced by socio-economic factors such as race, education, income, ethnic origin, gender, etc. These factors impact people throughout their life cycle. and we call them the social determinants of health. Parity, the other word that I use, is a term that defines the state of being equal. So, for example, or to illustrate this, in the Bahamas we have identified two groups of patients. We have public patients, we have private patients. We have insured patients, we have uninsured patients. We have people who live in Nassau or Freeport, and that means that they live near a major medical center. And then you have the family islanders, and I've listened in this place to many of my parliamentary colleagues speak about challenges in their islands. Much of the debate about health care is centered on a desire to achieve equality or parity, at least in terms of access, quality, and safety. It is that principle that has driven the world to adopt the principle of UHC, or universal health care. UHC is the philosophic soul of NHI. At least in health, it doesn't matter whether you have a private room or a flat screen TV, but it does matter if you're more likely to die or suffer a complication because of where you live or how much money you have. I like to speak about the analogy of a jumbo jet flying from Nassau to London. There are few people flying in first class, even though our ministry, this government, we don't fly first class. We go in business class and back. There are few people flying in first class where they eat and drink well, they have top shelf wine, and they have lots of space. Behind them, there are people in business class. They got a little less space, but they're still pretty comfortable. The majority of the people are in economy class. They eat basic food. They may feel a little bit stiff after the long flight. They may have to wait longer to use the bathroom, but the tickets are reasonably affordable. The people are on the same plane. They may have different experiences, but they have the same pilot and the same crew. They take off and land at the same time, and they all arrive at the same destination. Those with means in first and business class and those in economy class have the same safety risk as those that don't. Mr. Speaker, that crude comparison is the model that we will develop in healthcare in the Bahamas. One that is safe for all, that maintains equal access for all, but which allows for choice. Now, much has been said about the precarious state of the national economy in fiscal year 2016 to 2017. The side opposite has claimed that the huge run-up in the GFS deficit, totaling some $500 million, was primarily a function of the impact of Hurricane Matthew. They claim that they exercised fiscal restraint and prudence. Now, when I arrived at the Ministry of Health shortly after May the 10th, that's not what I found. What I found was distressing. There were fiscal decisions made that had a decidedly negative impact on the ability of the public health institutions to provide care for patients. There were professionals working for my ministry that had not been paid for years. I found that we owe vendors for drugs, vaccines, and medical supplies. As we approach the end of year, the suppliers of drugs and vaccines were owed by the PHA $2,896,714. We owed an additional $2,170,937 for medical and surgical supplies. In addition, the PHA had $9,314,629.48 of outstanding commitments. Included in that amount, Mr. Speaker, was roughly $5 million that had been promised by the Ministry of Finance to recruit nurses and other health professionals to staff the critical care block. That money, which was promised by finance, was never paid. The extra money to pay interns, promised, never paid. So today, we now have critical care beds in the critical care block that cannot be opened because of a lack of staff. We have bills for patients receiving and needing dialysis and radiation therapy that were in arrears, not paid. Let me recap, Mr. Speaker. Let me get this straight. we have a shortfall in recurrent expenditure at the Public Hospital Authority of almost $16.5 million, which was needed for medication, vaccines, dialysis, and other ongoing costs. Additionally, what I found was that projects on the children's ward, male surgical ward, the chest ward at the Princess Margaret Hospital was stopped midstream, paralyzing the heart and soul of our healthcare system, Mr. Speaker, because of a lack of funds. We have 67 out of 400 beds of PMH taken out of service, beds that were needed for sick patients, patients that had to wait in the emergency room for days for a bed. 67 out of the 400 beds at PMH taken out of service because construction and renovation had been stopped on 3 wards in Princess Margaret Hospital. Despite a plea from the managing director for just under $1 million to repair the major hospitals, the Rand and Princess Margaret Hospital, that had been damaged by Hurricane Matthew, a plea that he made in November of 2016, he never received the money to repair the hospitals damaged by Hurricane Matthew. So if you go into either hospital today, you will find multiple construction sites, most with no activity, and patients forced to wait in our emergency rooms because we have insufficient beds to house them. 67 beds, Mr. Speaker, taken out of commission at the same time, and construction to return those beds was stalled because the managing director of the PHA had no money. $16,426,156 owed, unpaid, due. Now, I wish that was the end of the story, because I got another accounting from the Ministry of Health, unpaid bills. That was another $9 million. The nurses serving on the Nursing Council, Mr. Speaker, not paid for years. The Health Profession Council, broke, Mr. Speaker, not paid for as much as 5 years, owed $228 million. Sorry, $228,000. Now, rent for clinic staff in the various islands, not paid. In Palmetto Point, in Rock Sound, Gregorytown, rent not paid. South Andros and North Andros, Red Bays and Bowen Sound, rent not paid. Mangrove Key, rent not paid. I wish this was the end of the story.
And I wish so too.
We dig deeper, Mr. Speaker, and we find that NHI had unpaid bills of $799,116, I got that wrong, for customer service reps, and $1,305,000 for 2 consultant firms who were costing the Bahamian people as much as $500,000 a month and $250,000 per month, respectively. I'm going to come back to this in a minute.
And they say we don't need to borrow no money.
Now, meanwhile, the March 2007, I'm coming back to that, don't worry. The March 2017 Central Bank Report, which was published on May the 1st, 2017 to the public, was made available to the Cabinet of the Bahamas a few days before. Now, this report was not good, and it painted a picture that ought to have caused any reasonable steward of the people's money to pause. Now, Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas knew that the Ministry of Finance had defaulted on payment of the salary deductions for civil servants beginning in April of 2017. Despite these findings, on Tuesday, April 25th, 2017, despite the huge sums of money that I just explained that they owed, despite the closure of 67 beds at PMH and the indignity caused for mothers, grandmothers, loved ones, children, despite the incomplete works at the RAN, despite the unpaid bills at the Ministry of Health and NHI, despite our sovereign downgrade, despite our record debt to GDP, what did the Cabinet of the Bahamas do? They don't pay obligations. They didn't buy medication. They didn't buy vaccines for babies. They didn't pay for supplies in the hospital. They didn't pay the rent for nurses and the other staff. They didn't compensate the vendors for money owed. They didn't pay the Royal Bahamas Police Force for monies owed. No, Mr. Speaker, you see, it was 2 weeks before a general election. There wasn't any time for fiscal prudence that week. There wasn't any time to respond to a major public health threat at the landfill. The letter received from PAHO was stamped, received by the Undersecretary in the Ministry of the Environment on April 28, 2017. Mr. Speaker, I'm ashamed to admit what our government did. You see, in addition to funding Carnival, incredibly, they found and made the time to award what came up to a total of $90 million of contracts to people who some would call the party faithful. And the reason that they gave was that the clinics throughout the country had to be upgraded. So the cabinet directed that $9,778,304.86 be paid as a down payment for new contracts for health projects throughout the Bahamas. This was conveyed by the Permanent Secretary of the Office of the Prime Minister, Cresswell Stirrup, to the PS of the Ministry of Health on April 27, 2017. And I'm going to table that letter. So even though the Treasury could not pay millions and millions of obligations affecting thousands of ordinary Bahamians, many of whom were suffering extreme financial hardship because of the government's delayed payments, they were authorized, they were directed, Mr. Speaker, to make what some would call a political down payment. In addition, Mr. Speaker, the side opposite entered into $9,756,006.64 worth of security contracts, janitorial contracts, generator purchases, and miscellaneous items weeks before the general election. My Lord, I can read some of these, Mr. Speaker. Yes, I'm going to lay it all on the table.
Okay.
We have contracts here, monthly cleaning services for the Exuma Mini Hospital, $424,638.84. Monthly cleaning Abaco Clinic. Now the Abaco Clinic has not been opened, Mr. Speaker. $500,000. Monthly landscaping services, $126,000. I want to turn my attention now to NHI. I'm going to take a little drink.
Take a breath, take a breath.
Over the last 40 years, there have been a number of attempts to reform health care in the Bahamas. We've seen the introduction of private care, the emergence of Physicians Alliance, led in part by the Honorable Prime Minister. We've seen early private-public partnerships, the development of the critical care block, the National Prescription Drug Plan, but none, I repeat, none has captured the attention of the public as much as NHI. It was the NHI debate that convinced me to enter frontline politics in 2006. Then, as in recent times, the governing PLP considered NHI to be their trump card, that it was going to be the winning or signature plank in their re-election campaign platform. Both times that gamble failed. Both times the NHI conversation has been loud, it has been angry, it has been emotional, it has been passionate, and it's been sometimes absurd. We've heard exaggeration, accusations, confessions, loads of plans and promises, but never much execution. There's no doubt, Mr. Speaker, that the Bahamian people want NHI. At least they want what they think they believe they've been told they would get with NHI. At least they want what they think they believe they've been told they would get with NHI. What they really want is better, as I think we all do. But you ask any Bahamian, including members from the side opposite, to describe or to outline the benefits of the NHI product that we have delivered today, and I could bet that they will get it wrong. You see, one thing is clear. In the effort to sell NHI, the previous government became so consumed with the idea that I believe they embellished, some would use words like exaggerated, the expected benefits, and dramatically elevated the public's expectations. They promised no more cookouts. The NHI fever was contagious, and it created a very peculiar situation within the executive branch of the government of the Bahamas. See, initially it was a Ministry of Health project. It was managed and funded to some degree at varying times by the Ministry of Health, at another time by the Office of the Prime Minister, by the Attorney General's Office, by the Ministry of Grand Bahama, paid for through NIB, and even by the Ministry of National Security. As in most things, too many cooks spoil the broth. And while there was loads of talking, there may have been people hearing, but there wasn't a whole lot of listening going on. And as the program evolved over the full 5 years, missing deadline after deadline, they were spending huge sums of money on consultants. Let's start with Sanagest. That was the first group of consultants. $1.2 million. Then PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I must admit, Mr. Speaker, that I don't have all the invoices, but of the invoices that I do have, $977,352,000. Then we come to KPMG, $8,382,542.02. In addition, the Bahamian people spent millions of dollars on advertising, consulting, and public relations with a firm called Fleischman Hillard. To date, $3,378,498.09. Now let me be precise. Not all of that was for NHI, but at least 90% of it, I believe, was for NHI. That, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Speaker, a grand total of $13,938,392.11 on NHI consultancy. Along the way, NHI became one of the most polarizing public policy programs in the Bahamas. We saw characters of industry with their characters assassinated, industries vilified, uncertainty created. Entire segments of the healthcare sector refused to participate in NHI. Many of our medical providers refused to sign up, even for lucrative contracts that were paying up to, and I want you to hear this carefully, an additional $300,000 per year per physician who sign up for the plan. Now let me put that in perspective. Up to $300,000 per year if you enroll 2,000 patients. And we have one clinician who has enrolled 1,800. Now I want to put that in perspective. I am a dual board certified, and I believe reasonably qualified, previous head of department who spent 8 years in training, and I have 23 years of experience in the Bahamas. And for that, I was paid $60,000 a year as a consultant specialist of the PHA. The same dollar amount would be true for specialists who face formidable obstacles to provide care, but who continue to serve with distinction. People like trauma surgeons, internists, anesthesiologists, public health professionals, and like the Prime Minister, obstetrician and gynecologists. But in order to get physicians to sign up, the government of the Bahamas entered into contracts with a group of doctors. And if a physician signs up the maximum number, that's 2,000 patients, he or she has the potential to receive up to $300,000 per year seeing patients. Okay? Where is that money going to come from? As we looked at the level of health system strengthening required to deliver NHI, it was forecasted that we had gross shortages in virtually every category of professional staff. That's physicians, nurses, pharmacists, x-ray technicians, social workers, administrators, dietitians. The total forecasted shortfall of healthcare professionals across the Bahamas, 803 professionals needed before we could implement NHI. Now, if we speak about equity and parity in an era of scarce resources, I want to look at the allocation of the contracts across the Bahamas. Now, I mentioned already that we have just under 400,000 people in the Bahamas, and I want you to think about $100,000 of contracts. Now, whether we should have entered into those contracts or we should not have entered into those contracts, we're not going to get into that discussion, Mr. Speaker. But I want to point to a particular constituency that would have received 13% of the contracts allocated, despite the fact that they only have 0.5% of the population. I speak about an island that has 1,200 residents, a key with 70 residents, and another island, San Salvador, with 930 residents. That comes to roughly 2,200 residents. All Bahamians are equally important, Mr. Speaker. But contract for Old Bight, $2,349,000. Orange Creek Clinic, $2,100,000. Smith's Bay, $6,600,000. Rum Key, $1.6 million. San Salvador, $300,000, for a grand total of just under $14 million. Mr. Speaker, I have directed the National Health Insurance Administration to revisit some of the decisions that have been made. We're going to review these contracts, and if you accuse me of stop, review, and cancel, if we can cancel some, we will cancel some. But we are going to set this right for the Bahamian people. Mr. Speaker, the government of the Bahamas, who was ousted on May the 10th, promised to spend $124 million of VAT and other tax money on their elaborate remake of primary care. The by then marginalized Minister of Health, in his 2016 budget address, admitted that there was no sustainable source beyond the consolidated fund that was ever agreed. So today, it's a sad testament to the impact of politics and tribalism that we have not gotten as far with this social program as we could have gotten. Certainly as a people, we are better than this, Mr. Speaker. The NHI product that was promised, the NHI product that the people expected, the NHI value for money, despite all the fanfare, despite all the advertising, is not what the people received. Is not what the people thought they were told they would get with NHI. But we're gonna fix this, Mr. Speaker. So help me God, we're gonna fix this. So if we currently spend $800 million a year, and our KPMG consultants, for whom we paid, I think, an adequate amount of money, say that $8 million, $100 million additional on primary care is enough, then it is a reasonable understanding that we spend anywhere between $600 and $700 million on secondary and tertiary care. I did okay in maths BJC. But we know that there are more than 6,000 people with NCDs who have progressed to catastrophic illnesses and complications. So why would we promise these people that this plan left in place by that government would stop our people from dying, as has been done repeatedly without any acknowledgement of the timeline? If we take a strictly primary care approach, it will take us between 20 and 40 years to impact the mortality rates of our people. But in the meantime, Mr. Speaker, our mothers and fathers and aunts and uncles, many of whom will be requiring complicated interventions, will be dropping dead like flies. So let's get real. There's no capacity in our public hospitals and in our healthcare system to treat many of these problems. Now I want to stop for 1 second, because one of the greatest tragedies of the NHI experience has been the impact on the NHI technical team. They've been tossed around, they've been beat up, they've been called all manner of names. Much of the beating that they have taken was directed at the political directorate. Professionally, they have been treated like prodigal children. I want to assure the NHI technical team that they will have my and my ministry's support, and together we will accomplish what many feel is impossible. So my advice to the people of the Bahamas, ladies and gentlemen, if you can afford health insurance, even though it has been made more expensive by VAT, and to the Minister of Finance, we need to remove VAT from health insurance. If you have health insurance, keep your health insurance. NHI in 2017 is a start. It has great potential, but we have a very long way to go. So where are we now, and where are we headed with NHI? To date, as of April 24th, we have had 22,000 Bahamians who have enrolled. NHI is an ambitious program, and it presents great opportunity. However, its execution has to be strengthened. Specifically, there must be sustainable financing coming from outside the consolidated fund. More quality professionals from the strong Bahamian medical community must be incentivized to participate. We have to prepare the entire country for the implementation of NHI. The program has to be transparent and accountable to all stakeholders. There has to be a plan to further address the need of catastrophic issues, which has now become one of the sustainable development goals of the World Health Organization. Not just primary care, but catastrophic care. The Free National Movement's been talking about this for the last 10 years, and now the world has followed our lead. There must be a solidified governance and management structure for the National Health Insurance Authority. A key shift will be the increased priority in the phased introduction of this catastrophic care program. We are going to take the $40 million that have been allocated to NHI, and we are going to divide it roughly $15 million towards improving primary care, $15 million for catastrophic care, and $10 million for the program's infrastructure. We are going to have to cap the per-patient benefits, and we're going to have to specify the benefits to maximize impact for as many patients. We are going to isolate the benefits from political interference and ensure value for patients and the public first. So don't call Dr. Sands to say, can you get me a benefit from NHI? We will not damage the existing industries. I'm speaking now to the pharmacists, to the drug wholesalers and retailers, to the insurance companies. But we are going to seek your partnership in the delivery of this product. The new NHI and PHA board will be announced shortly, and the composition of that board has been mandated to eliminate waste and inefficiency so that next year we should be able to commit as much as $100 million to the NHI program, not from new spend from the consolidated fund, but from savings from within the health budget. Contracts with existing providers and vendors will be reviewed and renegotiated. The NHI infrastructure will be downsized and made to function as a lean, efficient team under the leadership of, to be confirmed, Dr. DeLon Brennan. Many of the big ticket contracts for professional consultation and public relations will be dramatically reduced and redirected wherever possible to use Bahamian expertise. We will re-engage local providers and stakeholders to develop a product which is less a political tool and more a national solution. Looking ahead, I said that NHI will have to be sustainably funded. We are going to have to introduce small co-pays and allow for some choice in order to fund some of the pharmaceuticals and for diagnostic tests. I've mentioned previously the experience with Physicians Alliance where ultrasounds were provided to pregnant women for as little as $50 per person. Long-term sustainable financing measures will need to be identified, but until they have been considered by the Cabinet of the Bahamas, I am not at liberty to discuss them. Bahamians pay enormous amounts for health care now. They do not get the same value for money spent as certain other countries. But before this administration demands a new tax, a new levy, a new contribution, above or beyond what is already collected, we must and we will ensure that the waste and inefficiency is cut out of our healthcare system. Mr. Speaker, let's remember that NHI is a social program that is more than 3 decades in the making and one that has continued to evolve across administrations. This administration will continue the work that has been done by the previous administration, but we will do it in a way which is more sustainable, which is more collaborative, and while developing programs to encourage wellness, lifestyle modification, healthy eating, and preventative care. I now turn my attention to the Public Hospitals Authority, which includes PMH, the Rand Memorial Hospital or Grand Bahama Health Services, the National Emergency Medical Services, and the Supply Management Agency. Mr. Speaker, patient utilization levels of all of our facilities are very high. The 3 public hospitals with a combined inpatient complement of 1,010 beds accommodate more than 21,000 admissions annually. We logged 203,000 visits to the general acute outpatient facilities in 2016, while the psychiatric and geriatric areas saw another 24,000. Community services in Grand Bahama saw 85,000 patients. Not only is there severe overcrowding, but our facilities are so old that they present significant operational and maintenance issues, rendering many of these facilities obsolete and no longer sustainable. No amount of putty and paint can fix some of our clinics and hospitals. The proposed new budget of the PHA is set at $211,985,643. Now, in each fiscal year, including this year, there are several recurring management issues that result in shortfalls. One of the first is overtime, with nursing coverage continuing to be the biggest challenge. Additionally, we have contracts, as mentioned, for medical service or medical services. there are occasions when we have to outsource certain services because these services either do not exist in our facilities, such as radiation therapy, or we do not have adequate capacity to accommodate the load. This is the case with services like renal dialysis. Contracts for medical and surgical supplies had a budget last year of $6.4 million. But expenditure through to June 2017 is projected to be $9.1 million. Given the scourge of NCDs that I have clearly spelled out, we are anticipating a continued steady growth in the number of patients requiring dialysis and cancer therapy, and a continued significant expansion in critical care services. The addition of the critical care block is having a significant impact on the level of expenditures. For example, the number of our dialysis patients from PMH in Iran that has had to be outsourced is now up to 220 patients that are being referred outside of our hospitals annually. This continuing explosive growth in dialysis patients is a major concern and explains why we have to attack the problem at the other end with effective primary and secondary prevention strategies, and specifically reducing the risk of the NCDs, hypertension, and diabetes. Our overall goal is to increase the health of our people in this regard. Another challenging budget item is lab supplies. The PHA was allocated just over $2 million in the fiscal year 2016-2017, but we spent $2.7 million. A shortfall of $500,000 is therefore anticipated. This is simply due to the clinical load of patients and increased utilization. I must also draw this Honorable House's attention to the increase in costs for the operations associated with the full implementation of the critical care block. In the 2017-18 budget, in order to facilitate the contractual obligations of the critical care block, and this includes preventative maintenance, cleaning and security, and support of our clinical software programs, it will cost us $10.8 million. With respect to revenue generation, while we must admit that it's better in the private sector in the PHA, and that performance is in line with estimates established at the start of the fiscal year, in 2015-2016, we collected only $9,771,085, despite providing $211 million worth of service. We collected $9 million, we provided $211 million worth of service. Healthcare is expensive, Mr. Speaker. There's no free lunch. Bahamians are already paying for healthcare, but they're paying a lot. And we need to find a way to eliminate waste and capture revenue that we are duly entitled to capture. And so we will target existing mechanisms such as the Road Act and the industrial accident payment mechanisms from NIB to augment revenue to maintain services at our public healthcare facilities. Bahamians are already paying for healthcare. As we eliminate waste, we must also capture revenue, and we will target existing payment mechanisms such as the Road Act and the industrial accident payment mechanisms to augment revenue to improve services. The Public Hospitals Authority currently has on its agenda 5 areas of priority focus aimed at better preparing the organization and the wider public health care system for the effective implementation of universal health coverage over the short to medium term. These priorities comprise strategies for 1, strengthening our systems for clinical quality and patient safety; 2, strengthening systems for human resource management and training; 3, improving fiscal stewardship and management efficiency; modernizing our information systems; and redeveloping the infrastructure and physical environment of our health facilities. And many of these projects and strategies are advancing well. Mr. Speaker, health technology plays an important role in the provision of quality care. On the one hand, they are generating an ever-growing budgetary impact that can threaten healthcare system sustainability. An assessment in 2015 concluded that the procurement of new and upgraded equipment for diagnostic and imaging services at both PMH and the RAN were critical and necessary investments. And so we are pleased to note that the hospital's radiology departments are due to benefit from an upgrade at a cost of $7.5 million. These upgrades include MRIs and CT scans and ultrasound equipment in our facilities. There's a 6-month construction timeline from commencement for the RAND and a 4 to 6 month construction duration for PMH. And with these upgrades, we anticipate the early rollout of the teleradiology program with the public healthcare system. As of June 2017, June 1, 2017, the staff complement of the PHA stood at 4,076 professionals, the cost for which accounts for 70% of the PHA's operational budget. Highest priority must therefore always be placed on continually strengthening our systems for the management, training, and development of all the many categories of our employees. With respect to our largest category of professionals, nurses and nursing support staff, we have across our system severe staffing shortages, resulting in many challenges, including, but not limited to, significant and ongoing increases in the cost for overtime. Throughout our healthcare system, we have a shortage of 365 registered nurses. We're short 365 registered nurses and 114 TCNs. We have great difficulty maintaining our nurses. And particularly impacted are the coverage of critical and specialty services in the ICU, in the emergency room, in the dialysis unit. Because there are insufficient numbers of trained Bahamians available to fill these vacancies or who stay in these slots, there's an over-reliance on recruitment from abroad. My ministry will be escalating our engagement with the University of the Bahamas and other training institutes as appropriate to address this anomaly in the numbers of Bahamians matriculating into these professions. In terms of the development of existing nursing staff, the PHA places much emphasis on actively identifying and implementing priority in-house training programs. Mr. Speaker, time spent with a nurse is one of the most significant aspects of value in patient care. We have to find a way to maintain our nurses. And I have given the managing director of the Public Hospital Authority, the director of public health, and the director of nursing a directive that we need to find a way to make sure that our nurses feel appreciated in a tangible and very real way. Relative to physician training and development, our medical fraternity in the Bahamas continues to be proud of our achievements locally, resulting from our linkages with the UWI and other programs. Our residency programs for the training of specialists in family medicine is a prime example. Presently, there are 31 family medicine trained physicians working in the public sector, 5 of whom are deployed to the Family Islands. It is estimated that we need an additional minimum of 120 primary care physicians to provide adequate primary care for our population in New Providence, Grand Bahama, and the Family Islands. To increase the number of family medicine specialists being trained, plans are underway to expand the residency program to accommodate more physicians in training at one time. This requires extending the existing clinical space for family medicine services at the Agape Clinic into the remaining area of the building that recently became vacant. This work will begin shortly, and we anticipate that it will be completed before the end of 2017. Additionally, Mr. Speaker, with respect to allied health professionals, I must also note the importance of a proposal put forward by the Public Hospital Authority and approved by the previous administration. And this involves recommendations for addressing the severe shortages that I mentioned earlier. Shortages of rehabilitation therapists, physiotherapists, occupational therapists, recreational therapists, speech language pathologists, audiologists, etc. The recommendation calls for the recruitment of 146 professionals over a 3-year period at a total cost of $4.3 million, with 66 being required immediately at a cost of $1.5 million. The engagement of these professionals will make a significant and real difference in the quality of care delivered to the Bahamian people right here. Mr. Speaker, an important set of initiatives under the PHA's priority for improving fiscal stewardship and management efficiency is the restructuring and upgrading of the supplies management services across the public health care sector. Over the years, the consumption and cost of all supplies, but particularly drugs and medical supplies, have continued to escalate at untenable levels. In its ongoing strategies to control and reduce these increasing expenditures, the Public Hospitals Authority in 2016 consolidated procurement and supply chains of both pharmaceuticals and medical supplies from end to end, and we have created a new entity called the Supplies Management Agency. The restructuring and upgrading of these services will serve to optimize the use of resources. Mr. Speaker, the current patient information system is outdated, and we have embarked on the implementation of an integrated health information management system, or IHIMS, and this electronic medical record platform is designed to achieve the important goal of one patient, one record across the entire public healthcare system. All the hospitals, all the clinics, whether in New Providence, Grand Bahama, or the Family Islands, will be connected in real time. So it won't matter whether the patient accesses the service, no matter where the patient accesses the service, we will have their information, their lab results, their diagnostic results, and their radiology images in real time. This project was launched in January of 2017. Phase 1, patient registration, is scheduled to go live in October 2017, with the second phase scheduled for completion in summer of 2018. The connectivity between the PHA's data center and all community clinics with optimal performance standards is required for IHIMS implementation. The rollout of this connectivity is well underway, having begun in August 2016 with the 10 community clinics in New Providence and the mini hospitals in Exuma and Abaco. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has made the construction of a new women and child health unit a high priority of this administration. The Princess Margaret Hospital Labor Ward has become the safety net for antenatal patients seeking care after hours or patients requiring further investigative procedures not offered at the community clinics. This places an added demand on an already overburdened unit, resulting in overcrowding, high frustration, low productivity, compromised care of the laboring patient, violation of patients' dignity and privacy. In response to this F&M government will give the construction of this much-needed unit high priority in 2017 and 2018. We will also complete the work started on all of the stalled units at Princess Margaret Hospital. With respect to the Accident Emergency Department, where insufficient space for clinicians to examine and treat patients, resulting in patients being seen on the open floor or in cubicles where there are other patients present. And this, Mr. Speaker, compromises confidentiality, privacy, and personal dignity. And with a view to correcting this unacceptable situation, the previous administration, with our concurrence now, has approved funding in the amount of $14,212,000 to facilitate the upgrade and expansion of PMH's A&E. At the Rand Memorial Hospital, the first phase of development of a much-needed primary health care clinic on the western side of the Sunrise Highway in Grand Bahama has started. There are also other critical structural works, including the construction of a private ward services, 2 4-bedded public wards, a new kitchen and cafeteria, and a new doctor's on-call suite at the Rand Memorial Hospital. EMS. The National Program for Pre-Hospital Emergency Care is another priority of the health sector. We have heard members from all over the Bahamas asking about ambulances. I am pleased to state that EMS is making great strides, and we recently procured 14 new ambulances, 3 of which were deployed in New Providence, 1 in Abaco, 1 in Exuma, 1 in North Andros. Another one will be deployed to West End in Grand Bahama, and the remainder will be deployed at the main New Providence base. As I get ready to conclude, Mr. Speaker, I want to talk about public health and the way forward. The Department of Public Health is an agency within the Ministry of Health with responsibility for the delivery of primary and public health services throughout the Commonwealth. Of the 92 primary health care facilities, 82 are under the direct management of the Department of Public Health, and the rest are managed by the PHA in what we call a soft arrangement. A review of national data from the Ministry of Health gives an idea of the utilization patterns. In 1 year, we had almost 697,000 visits made to public health facilities. That's all public health facilities. The public uses our facilities to access important health services. Services related largely to chronic non-communicable diseases and other conditions make up a large or a significant amount of these visits, 40%. Antenatal and postnatal services account for 14%, and child health services account for another 13%. In August of 2015, the department engaged the services of 4 private architects to assist with infrastructure repairs. Significant work has been done to advance repairs and upgrade of healthcare facilities to meet healthcare standards and NHI requirements. I spoke about this earlier. A total of 48 healthcare facilities have been identified for the first phase. Just to give you an idea, we are going to be renovating or repairing 4 polyclinics, the Elizabeth Estates Clinic, Flamingo Gardens Clinic, the Fleming Street Clinic, and the South Beach Clinic. Mangrove Key in South Andros, we are going to be doing repairs at the Mangrove Key and Nicholstown clinics. In Acklands, the Spring Point Doctor's Residence is being converted to a primary health care clinic, and contracts are being reviewed to facilitate the renovation of a building to a new Salina Point clinic. Though repairs have commenced at the Spring Point Clinic, these repairs have not been completed and staff are still suffering. In Crooked Island, repairs are being carried out at both Landrail Point and Colonel Hill. In Mayaguana, repairs are being carried out at Abrams Bay Clinic. In Inagua, repairs are being carried out at the Inagua Community Clinic and residences. In Eleuthera, repairs at the Spanish Wells and Harbor Island clinics. And there are plans to repair a facility in the Bluff as the existing facility needs to be condemned. Repairs are also required at Lower Bold, Hatchet Bay, Governor's Harbor, Rock Sound, and Topham Bay. In Cat Island, I've already mentioned the brand new facilities that are being constructed at Orange Creek, Smiths Bay, and Old Bight. I've also mentioned the construction in San Salvador and Rum Key. In Exuma, the staff of the PHA's Capital Development Unit is currently in Exuma to conduct repairs and works poorly executed by previous contractors, and plans are also underway to establish a satellite clinic in Barretari. We will be doing works in the Berry Islands, In Long Island, we're going to be doing an assessment and scopes of work for the repairs to the Deadman's Key and Sims community clinics. But, Mr. Speaker, though we can execute repairs, there are some, I get into that, there are some healthcare facilities that have reached their end of life. New healthcare facilities are urgently required for Stanhill Key and Ragged Island. New facilities are also needed for Bahamians in Black Point, Farmers Key, Moores Island. I look it out for all y'all, man. Green Turtle Key and Red Bays. As the country is well aware, climate change is real, and global sources project more severe weather systems over time. And this means more severe hurricanes and flooding. And this leaves many communities without basic necessities such as electricity. And so we have committed for purchase of generators in at least 6 to 8 family islands. I will now turn my attention to disease surveillance, disasters, and health emergencies. In the globalized era in which we live, the Bahamas is particularly vulnerable to public health threats because of its geography, its tourist-dependent economy, and the free movement of peoples and goods. And the impact of these threats can range from local outbreaks to incidents with national or global ramifications. Our National Disease Surveillance Unit plays an indispensable role in safeguarding our nation, as there is no national security without disease surveillance. We recognize the historical importance of public health measures in our success with vaccine-preventable diseases. But we know about the ongoing threats such as dengue, chikungunya, and Zika, and we must be continually poised to respond to new and emerging threats. These threats speak not only to vector-borne diseases, but include radiological, chemical, and natural disasters such as hurricanes, which pose particular vulnerabilities for small island developing states such as ours. And Hurricanes Joaquin and Matthew are harsh reminders of this reality. The recent landfill fire is another public health threat. And my government and my ministry, in conjunction with the Ministry of the Environment, has already committed to carrying out recommendations outlined in the previously mentioned PAHO report. Mr. Speaker, response to and mitigation of the potential negative health impact of public health hazards and emergencies is not the sole responsibility of the public health sector. We need a whole government response. And our response should be built on multi-agency planning and coordination before, during, and after such events. And though we have not met all the core requirements for the International Health Regulations 2005, this framework has facilitated in-country, regional, and international collaborations with increasing successes. Mr. Speaker, the implementation of a single governance structure for the public health system is the most important opportunity to effect change and bring substantive life to one health for all people approach to restructuring the public health care system. It is the ministry's strong belief that we need to bring all of our healthcare systems under one umbrella. And these entities we are going to be establishing entities to replace functions performed by the Department of Public Health and the Public Hospitals Authority by the creation of new entities. One, the National Public Health Authority, the NPHA, for oversight of population and public health functions. Two, the Primary Care Authority for provision of health maintenance and primary health care services, and the Public Hospital Authority. They will join the fourth authority, the National Health Insurance Authority, which is responsible for sustainable financing for health. The tide has turned. Simply improving techniques and modalities in the delivery of clinical medicine is no longer enough. It has been demonstrated globally that primary, specialist, and hospital care representing clinical medicine is not enough to address the health needs of our population. The Bahamian experience has confirmed that healthcare services reform in the absence of a strengthened core public health function would be foolhardy, especially at a time where we must begin to make small strategic and savvy investments for big results. The public health functions will play a leading role in changing the tide from health being a drain on national resources to a driver of socio-economic progress. So, Mr. Speaker, a national public health authority will serve as the foundation for population health by providing three essential public health functions if a consistent companion in the health discourse will unleash the best of our ideals for the health and well-being. These functions include the assessment of population's health, including the forecasting of future health sector needs. 2, the development of comprehensive public health policies using science and leadership, and the assurance that health care delivery is afforded to all. This is the universal health coverage mandate by a suitably trained and regulated health force in safe facilities. The National Public Health Agency will also be tasked with ensuring that the national health agenda incorporates the social determinants of health, utilizing the health in all policies approach as we seek to attain the Sustainable Development Goals as mentioned from the WHO and PAHO. As I conclude, Mr. Speaker, my ministry's eyes have not been shielded from the challenges in changing the way in which we think about and approach health. I have deliberately spelled out in very graphic terms the challenge facing our country. The work of the former Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Dal Regis, has positioned the Ministry of Health with staff who are equipped with the requisite academic preparation, technical expertise, and international exposures. The legislation for the establishment of the National Public Health Agency will be tabled in the first quarter of the next fiscal year. This contribution today makes it clear that my government is committed to rethinking health. The core principles of quality, equity for all, value for money, accountability, patient empowerment, patient rights, confidentiality, and workplace safety are closely related to my personal philosophy of health. But to achieve our government's ambitious agenda for health, we must set priorities. Enhanced, modernized communications will be the flagship of my ministry, both inside and outside of the ministry. We will aggressively pursue a performance-based approach, utilizing quality indicators and a dashboard for real-time monitoring. Mr. Speaker, there must be a change in our service delivery approach. No longer is the old-fashioned, non-patient-centered approach acceptable. Our healthcare system will be responsive to patients' needs, and we're going to measure outcomes. As I have said, our health infrastructure is in dire straits. Many of our facilities were constructed more than 2, some as many as 5 decades ago. To add to this, many have been battered by repeated weather insults. Further, we have failed to align our health infrastructure planning with our expanding, aging populations. Mr. Speaker, the budget for fiscal year 2017-18 and the contribution by this member from Elizabeth, particularly in the Ministry of Health, has understandably raised the eyebrows of all Bahamians. The expenditure of billions of dollars of hard-earned taxpayers' money had better provide value, and there's no tolerance for waste. Healthcare is not free. Our appetite for health services is almost insatiable. This year's budget is almost exclusively financed through the Consolidated Fund. Moving forward, we will have to improve our healthcare product delivery and monitoring so that any incremental cost to a struggling Bahamian public, while it might not be welcomed, it could possibly be tolerated. That is what is required in the people's time. May God bless us all. May He bless our great country. Elizabeth supports this budget. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
As many? Oh,
Health Organization report, which he indicates sort of buys into the concept of primary care and catastrophic care. And I'm wondering if he would also, during the course of this debate, lay that on the table of the Parliament. If you have that available, dear.
Thank the honourable member for her question. That document is actually in my office. It is a revision of the Sustainable Development Goals. I would have just had sight of it yesterday. I would be happy to lay it on the floor of this honourable House as soon as I am able.
For that very much. The other point I just want to clarify whether I looked at the numbers for the consultancy under NHI, and I think it amounts to 10 million, if you could confirm that, because I know the BTC was about 30 million. I just want to make sure that, I just want to be sure this is 10 million. Make sure. Because the healthcare system is a very complex system, and it's nationwide. I just want to make sure that
honourable member.
Is it 10 million? I'm asking if it's 10 million. The numbers came individually, Mr. Speaker. I wrote them down. I could add them up, but I was asking, he said 1.2 for Salages, 977. I was asking for global figure.
Honourable member.
Yes, Mr. Speaker.
You know, I'm trying to be as lenient as I could because of the composition of the House.
Yes, Speaker.
However, if you turn to page 34,
Right.
Rule 38, you will notice that 38.1 subsection 1 says a member who rises on a point of order shall, when invited by the Speaker or the Chairman to do so, state the infringement of these rules on which his point of order is based, and then resume his seat.
Speaker, this is not a point of order.
So what is it that you're rising
I
on?
was asking first whether the member would kindly lay a report, and he said he had no difficulty. But he thanked me for the request and then for the question. And then secondly, I was asking clarification for the numbers for the consultancy. And the only other issues, Mr. Speaker, is that it appears as if the member indicated that there is an emphasis on catastrophic care, and there's a shift in focus for health. As we were saying primary, you were saying catastrophic. But I note that the amount that the previous administration had allocated for catastrophic was at 20 million. And the amount under this new arrangement is 15 million. And so there seems to be, Mr. Speaker, I just want to clarify, I don't want to miscast when I speak out there, whether the member could confirm, because that's how it sounds, that this government is actually rolling back its fiscal financial commitment to the rollout of national health insurance. And I think he said there were how many thousands already enrolled? The member for Elizabeth, is it the fact that we are rolling back the commitment to NHI? I'm speaking to the member, and he's a very smart young man. He can speak for himself.
Order that the documents be brought up. Order that the documents lie on the table.
The chair recognizes the member for South, Central, and North Eleuthero.
I'll accept that. Mr. Speaker, members of this Honorable House of Assembly, today is most certainly one of the defining moments in my life. As I now enter the halls of this Parliament, I am cognizant of the awesome responsibility that has been placed upon me by the people of North Eleuthero. And by extension, the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. I shall not let you down. But first allow me to thank those individuals who played a pivotal role in me arriving to this place. Jesselie Mackey, my mother, whose wise counsel was in all our proposals, be sure to acknowledge the need for God's help to ensure our success. And for that I say, thank you. My beautiful wife, Cindy, who did not go unscathed by the vicious personal attacks, but served as my pillar. Excuse me. Both. In fact, she served as both. Good wife. Never letting me forget the importance of our mission. And for that, I say thanks. My children, Kimberly and Tommy, and my grandchildren, Camilla and CJ, whose hope of a better Bahamas was one of my main reasons for entering into this place. And to my siblings, Liz Mackey, Ernie Mackey, Dawn Mackey, Charles Mackey, Casper Johnson, and Raquel Johnson. This journey we took as a family, flanked by my brothers-in-laws, Kendall Eburn, Elijah Bryce, Donald Higgs, Troy Higgs, my sister-in-laws, Daphne Hepburn, Sherry Bryce, Carol Jones, and let me not forget my mother-in-law, Olga Higgs, who for the first time in our history supported her son-in-law in the Free National Movement. And to them, I say thanks. And now for the nuts and bolts that held this team together. And that is why I take exception to Elizabeth, who said he had the best team. I beg to differ. Micah Roberts, who for those of you who are familiar with the F&M would know that we were both known as the Twin Towers. He was my main man, my general, the person that left Bimini to come to Bryland to ensure the victory for the Free National Movement in North Eleuthero. My team in Bryland, Martin Lee Grant, Eddie Major, Brian Neely, Janine Mather, Adriana Sweeting, Lawrence and Judy Thompson, Brent Albury, Lorianne Albury, Brian and Faye Sawyer, Richie Thompson, Robert C4, Leah Higgs, Aniska Higgs, Jan Ramming, Juanita Martin,
Alex McPhee, Alex Davis, Latanya Albury, Lacey Poole, and last but not least, the Cherry Boys. And they were affectionately called the Cherry Boys. They were made up by Alvin Cash Jr., Kadaro Paseni, Equando Neely, and Asa Brown. In Spanish Wells, I had Robert Roberts, Monia Pinder, Doris Ross, Lance Pinder, Richie Pinder, Charlton Lummy Roberts. The Bluff, Charlene and Rodney Green, Reginald Gibson, Ezra Hudson, Felicia Gibson, Anna Gibson. And in the Bogs, there were Miko McDonald, Gordon Cash, Edney Higgs, Willie Cash, Orrin Cash, Lucine Cash, Desmond Johnson, Byron, Biddy, Eula May, Higgs. Yeah. The current, I had Aldridge Albury, Bob Griffin, and Osborne Beach. Gregory Town was former Senator Lonnie Rowe, Lauren Pedro Bastian, and Robert Thompson. To all of them, I say thanks. And in the gallery, my good friend, my white brother, Richard Lightbourne. And now, you're getting ahead of yourself. And now to those whose feet I walk in. Noel Roberts, who was my political father, who was a giant of a man, for those of you who are familiar with North Eleuthera or St. John's, for which it was called. Alvin Smith, another former member of Parliament, and our most recent member of Parliament, Theo Neely. And the both of them walked with me side by side, door to door. And if they were alive today, Abner Pinder, I already said Theo. No, if they were alive today, the people of who I speak, Abner Pinder, Sunshine McQueen, and Glenn Bullitt, I assure you they would have been in this gallery today. This has been an historic victory in so many ways, challenged from so many directions. We were able to arrive to this place today, all but to the prayers of Almighty God and the work of that magnificent team of who I named. Some names I may have forgotten. Nonetheless, I had to give them the recognition that they duly deserve. And now to the budget. I did not wish that the very first thing that I did in this House of Parliament would be to vote on such a huge borrowing exercise. But the fact of the matter is, the state of our economy requires it. We've all have felt and seen the conditions of this country. We've all know of the shortfalls of the required services that are to be provided in our nation. But I understand, I truly understand the need for us to be able to meet our commitments, take care of our responsibilities, and move forward and taking this country to the next level. We say it is the people's time, and the people's time is what it must be. I look at the general needs of my constituency. Water, which is so essential to everyone. In each of my townships, I am challenged with the quality of water and the constant delivery of water. Every day, I am asked about when is this water situation going to be corrected, especially in the area of Gregory Town. Sometimes the water's off 3 and 4 days. And I know how difficult it is to be able not to bathe or not have the availability of water to bathe. And so I've told the people of North Eleuthera, this government, this caring government, this people's government will correct this problem. I've spoken with my leader, and he has indicated that a program that was being pursued in 2014, 2015 by the previous administration for the establishment of a reverse osmosis program to supply water to North Eleuthera, which will correct the problems that we now experience, that he and this government will ensure that that comes to fruition. And so I can say to the people of Spanish Wells, that water is coming. I can say to the people in Gregory Town, that water is coming. I can say to the people in the Bluff, and to the Current, and into Harbor Island, because they all are waiting on good, reliable water. Crown land. It's another issue that we face in North Eleuthera. There are people that we have on the mainland that have been living on Crown land for many, many years, but have not been able to access that land. They want their documents in order to allow them to get the necessary financing so that they could improve their properties, so that they could take on business enterprises. And so I say to my government today, a government of which I am a part of, that joy has now come to you, because now is the people's time, and you shall, under this administration, receive what you are so badly entitled to. Also, on the many needs of North Eleuthera, it's a fire truck or firefighting apparatus. During Thanksgiving of last year, there was a very sad occasion. A young lady in the settlement of Current was the victim of a fire. loss of life because we did not have the proper firefighting equipment. A fire truck had to travel all the way from Palmetto Point, some 1.5 to 2 hours to get there to fight a fire. We cannot, in this modern day, have communities, and so many of them, not having the proper firefighting apparatus to deal with catastrophes such as that. And so I'm committed to the people of North Eleuthera. Your needs, my needs, we will work together to ensure that these requirements are met. So never again will it be able to be said that persons or properties have perished because of lack of equipment. An airport. North Eleuthera is one of the most diverse constituencies that you would see. Harbor Island, which is unique, a tourist destination, that we have some of the richest persons in the world. You can walk down that street any day and run into movie stars or famous personalities. Or you can go to Spanish Wells, which is one of the most distinguished fishing communities in the Bahamas. You go to the mainland, hard-working people, many of who are in the construction field, or some who still are farming. But we have an airport where anytime during the middle of the day, you see hundreds of persons sitting on the outside. God help us when it rains. They've got to try and jam into a very, very small building. There has to be relief for the people of North Eleuthera. We have to get a new airport inside there. It is a thriving constituency. It is booming. Hundreds, thousands of tourists and residents are traveling into North Eleuthera, only to be packed in a small, cramped building, only to have to run and hide during the rain. I asked my government today, and I know we are challenged. I know the money does not exist as it should be. But we, being the people's government, I do believe that I will, or we, the people of North Eleuthera, will receive the necessary funds so the airport in North Eleuthera can be addressed. We need it. I won't be presumptuous to say we deserve it, but I will say we will be forever grateful when we get it. Right, Minister? I'm pointing out these issues because I want you to be aware of them. I understand the state of the country's finances, but I also realize that for us to go forward, for us to move forward, we need central government. We need you to help us. Those are general needs that North Eleuthera needs. Those are the things that tie us together as a community. And those are the requirements that will make things better for us. But now to the specifics of some of our townships. I've spoken with the Minister of Works on numerous occasions. I've spoken to the Minister of education also, the township of Gregorytown. We have a primary school that has been unoccupied for over 5 years. We have about 50 students that are cramped in a large hall. Something is most definitely wrong with that. Primary schools are the foundation of our education. It is when young minds are formed and when they decide the direction that they're going to take. Help me help my people in North Eleuthera. And either making the decision for us to repair the whole school or to give us a new school. I plan to meet with the people in Gregorytown to have that decision made as to whether or not if we would repair the old school or seek the government's assistance in building a new school. But a new school or a school is what Gregorytown requires. We cannot continue to have those young people be housed in such a small, hot building. They are looking for us to help them. They are looking for us to assist them. And then to my people in Spanish Wells. Spanish Wells is unique. It is unique because it has always supported the free national movement. And every election cycle we hear the rumblings that Spanish Wells is not going to vote F&M, or they're not going to support this particular F&M candidate or the next particular F&M candidate for whatever reason. But I can tell you, not from talk, but from experience, that Spanish Wells always supports the free national movement. But the people in Spanish Wells, particularly the fishermen, are challenged by some of the things that are going on in our country today. They're challenged by boats that are operating in our waters with 10, 15, 20 so-called engineers of nationalities that are not Bahamians. And it is a problem. And it is a vexing problem that is getting worse. Every day, I am told that it's becoming more difficult for these hard-working individuals who collectively have invested millions of dollars into their boats and their equipment in order to make a honest living for them and their families. All they wish is that we do what we are required to do. Protect them so that they, as Bahamians, can earn an honest living. Ministers, please, I beg you, because I get calls every day. Every day, and I'm sure Long Island could attest to that. Even Fort Charlotte. I don't know how much boats Fort Charlotte have. but between Long Island and myself, we got about 80% of the fishing vessels. Also, the issue for Spanish Wells are the roads on the northern side. I was gladly told by a couple of the residents of Spanish Wells that, the previous administration had approved to do the roads to North Eleuthera. So my government, who I voted for, I'm sure they're going to execute it. And so I will tell them, we will get it done. Somehow, we will get it done. And then there's the bridge. The bridge from Spanish Wells to Russell Island. That has not been, it was installed after Andrew in '92. It is becoming dilapidated and challenged. And so I've been asked to bring that concern to you today. Whenever we do find the funding to correct the many problems that we have in this country, please consider the bridge between Russell Island and Spanish Wells. And now to my hometown, Harbor Island. You know, I've been told that by some that Ricky can only look out for Harbor Island. That's his home. But that is not the case. I represent North Eleuthera. But I do have a love for Harbor Island. Not a greater love, but a love. Not a greater love, but a love. You know, they're all my children. Whose father would love one son more than the other?
I think that.
There's a need for a commercial dock in Harbor Island. For those of you who've had the opportunity to frequent Harbor Island and see the congestion, there are some days the Boengi is on the southern side, the Bahamas Daybreak is on the western side, the Luther Express may be on the northern side, and G&G is on the outside waiting to get into the dock. You know, well, Michael, you can have all the help you need. But the point I'm making is this. There's too much congestion, and then we have the passengers who are coming to Harbor Island, the most famous island of the entire Bahamas. Is where the rich and the famous come to play and to live. Like I said earlier, you could walk down any street and run into a movie star or a basketball star or some rich magnate, all of which find Harbor Island their home. But we've got to do better. We've got to move the commercial business from the main dock. And I've asked my Prime Minister, the leader, to pursue the possibility of establishing a commercial dock down there where BEC is currently operating. And I've been given leave to do so. And we have great interest. We have great interest by several groupings that are willing to be a part of this proposal. And understanding the finances of the country, we are looking to do this as a private-public partnership. Now, I know in some circles that has become a dirty word. However, I do believe if done correctly, if vetted, if properly explored, and everything is open and above board, it could be very, very useful in light of the economic times. I was also advised by a gentleman who's been very much involved in the shipping industry, Oh, and just as a disclaimer, I'm not talking about St. Anne's. that we can talk to persons at the port, and Harbor Island will fall into, it'll be a unique situation, very much as how the port is operating here in Nassau. That could very well work for us in Harbor Island. And then there's other persons who've expressed an interest. And so we're going to go forward. We're going to do due diligence. We're going to look at this possibility. And we're going to make it work. I remember a couple days ago when Exuma and Ragged Island said, in this budget, I don't see anything to get the economy going. I didn't see anything innovating. Well, we have a cadre of excellent colleagues in the F&M. And we're going to look at the creative ways in which to correct the problems in our constituency. We are going to reach out in different ways and finding funding or being able to expand our economies or being able to get people to believe in themselves and invest in themselves and start to do self-help initiatives. And this is what we're talking about. And this is how we will get it done. And that is why I say that during my campaign, I promised the people of North Eleuthera a scholarship foundation. And we are quickly moving forward for the establishment of that. And we have already acquired the support of an individual who is guaranteeing us $1 million a year. In addition to that, in North Eleuthera, we are establishing an employee registry so that all of our people can list their skills and their qualifications. And we also plan to have biannual workshops so that they can sharpen their skills. And so employers in the area know that there's a data bank that they can resort to when they need the employees that they will need, because we're going to see that there's an upswing in our economy. This is how we're going to grow our economy. We are establishing a development co-op, and that co-op is going to come together in fishing and in farming and in small businesses. We have already gained access to a 30,000 square foot building, which we plan to utilize, that when we get our farmers back into the fields and farming, that we have somewhere first to collect them, to prep them, and to sell them. Because we will establish a marketing team who's going to reach out to the hotels, the restaurants, the food stores, and the business houses with products like tomatoes, and ensure that we will have more than ample supply for our local need. So there should never be a need for another case of tomatoes to go on the Daybreak or the Eleuthera Express or your vessel G&G to come into North Eleuthera, because we will be able to supply all of our needs. It is also our intent to put in bottling apparatus so that we can bottle tomatoes. And I can tell you that my wife, who has a food store, have difficulty keeping bottled tomatoes in our store. They sell. And that's a product that we can produce en masse. And when we saturate the market in North Eleuthera, we'll ship them here to Nassau or to other family islands. And so, Agriculture Minister, you know, they talked about Bamsi and Menandris. We're going to show them why Eleuthera was the breadbasket capital of the Bahamas. You know, it's not about creating the wheel, you know. It's all about marketing. We've got to, our farmers could grow. They could produce. But we've got to put in place marketing strategies and packaging. You're right. And that is what North Eleuthera is going to do. And we realize that the country don't have the money, so we can do it ourselves. Now, all we're saying, we don't want no red tape holding us back. And when we come saying, minister, or this minister, the next minister, I need approval to do this, to do that, and won't nobody tell me, go see my this, or go see my that. I'm letting you know now. I am going to help you to help the country. That's what we're going to do. We're going to fix it. You know, I also want to, I like Exuma, you know, because he's a family island fella. Y'all gonna find out us family island fellas to stick together. Y'all, hey? Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Now I know. But he talked about that small businesses drives an economy. And I agree. So we've got to start now empowering our small businesses. I was never excited about Bahamas, you know, taking hundreds and hundreds of millions or billions of dollars and putting into one big structure. You know what this country was built on? Small boutique hotels. So when the people come, they get to mix and mingle with the Bahamian fella. His charm. That's why you think Bryland's so successful. We don't have a hotel. We don't have a hotel on Bryland with more than 60 rooms. But we've won award after award after award because the people get to mix with you. And you all pile up in them big tall buildings, ain't nobody see you.
Anchor projects stop the whole economy.
Let's see, you got to fight for you, I fight for me. But we're going to fight together. And so, also, and on a serious note, when you look at small business enterprises, a bank will lend you $30,000 to buy a car, but won't lend you $10,000 for a small business. Something wrong with that.
I'm telling you.
Something is drastically wrong with that. We've got to empower our people. We've got to take, and I like young people because I work with them. They make me feel young. I mean, I am young,
Yeah.
but I don't like travel with Travis. Bain and Grandstand, sorry.
In Grandstand, yeah.
All respect. I knew here. But the point I'm making is this. Let's do something for these small businesses.
Yes.
And when we do, we have so many success stories. I see just recently the striping company. They had some big gala affair. They're only 5, 6 years old. Started out with $5,000.
Yeah. And F&F.
Under the F&F. But the concept is that we've got to empower our young people. And once we empower them, once we give them the tools, just like my good friend Charlie Maynard said, let's teach them how to fish. Let's teach them how to operate businesses. Let's equip them with what they need. And then, you know, we won't be here rowing and fighting about we ain't get no money. Because everybody will be making money and everybody will be happy. I want to get out of business now. I got 2 young children. And I got a little small development that I'm doing, a little small key. And I want to get out there so bad and just kick my feet up and relax. But our young people are not given the opportunities enough. But I'm happy to say today that it's changing. Because when I look around, you know, I feel like an old man now. I feel like an old man. We got 21-year-olds, 22, 23-year-olds, 30-year-olds. But the point I'm making is this. Let's empower them. Let's give them an opportunity. And when we do that, our entire country move forward. We've got to invest in our own. We've got to invest in Bahamians. We can't just give lip service. Yeah. Even if it's not so, the perception that foreign is better or foreign gets better service or people, or we roll out the red carpet for the foreigner versus the Bahamian. We've got to get past that. And we've got to start now investing in Bahamians. Because we got nowhere to go, you know. We have nowhere to go. And when those fellas from these big old monstrosities, when things go sour, they pack up, they leave. I ain't got nowhere to go. I here to stay, just like all of our Bahamians. And so I say to you today, that while this budget, with all of its challenges, I understand that, I accept that, but I do know that the leadership of this party, they have done it having the believing that what they were doing is in the best interest of this country. And while we tighten our belt, and I gotta just say this before I leave. Another thing Exum Ragged Island said was that the ideal makeup of a company is 30% for the employees. 30%. The employees should make up 30% of your company, of your cost, of the expenditure, of course. And I worked for a company years ago, about 25, 30 years ago, that used to say the ideal was 10%. But if 30% makes up if a third makes up your costs, and we are now over 60%. And just prior to election, plenty people, I ain't gonna put no number, plenty people was at it. I know Exum and Ragged Island wouldn't agree to that. But we are faced with the realities of our financial situation. And I support the bill because I know while it is tight now, the next time around, as a result of the measures we are taking now, we'll be able to do more the next time around. And so I take this opportunity to support the bill and thank North Luther once again for allowing me the opportunity to sit in this place. I thank you.
North Luther, I think you made history. I think that's the first speech in my 42 years where the chair was never recognized in this great house. I think you made history. Someone hearing by a radio may not know where you are speaking from, but I might listen with interest. And no, Mr. Speaker, no, Mr. Madam. As many. As many. Chair recognizes the member for Fox Hill. Chair recognizes the member for Bamboo-Town.
Mr. Speaker, I do move that the House do suspend at this time until tomorrow, Thursday, June 15th at 10 a.m.
It's being moved and second that this House suspend until Thursday, 15th of June, 2017 at 10 a.m. As many may remain seated. Those, as many as in favor may remain seated. Those opposed, rise. It's being carried. The House now suspends until the 15th of June, 10 a.m.